The story of Dylan Dark. Dylan Dark is 6 foot 2 inches tall. He weighs 240 pounds with the appearance of short, dark hair with a side fringe. His glaring eyes and slow movements, combined with a purple and black colour scheme, signify an evil character, alongside being equipped constantly with a crowbar. Dylan hails from Chicago, Illinois, with the signature moves of the spear, the drive-by kick, essentially a step-up boot, and the condemnation, the snapmare front bump into a blackout. Imagine, if you will, a slow-moving, vindictive and merciless killer who refers to his enemies as Mr. or Mrs., refusing to identify them with their given names. Dylan's chaotic actions led him to constant stipulation matches, thriving on punishing those he believes are inferior to him, all with the signature weapon of a crowbar. The trouble is, Dylan believes everybody to be inferior to him. Instantly defining himself as a cold-blooded rule-breaker, Dylan grew hatred for the stars designed for the future and took his aggressions to a condemning level of consequence. Dylan's savage actions led to a variety of never-before-seen match types, heartbreaking actions, and even the loss of a life. His constant cry for attention and incessant need for the spotlight places him in over-the-top and chaotic circumstances, all due to his thirst for being on top. Starting impetus with huge impact, Dylan Dark instantly oversteps the line by savagely attacking his already defeated opponents. This, of course, creates a huge issue with the president, Sam Pullen, who is trying his best to give his new stars opportunities rather than concussions. With the boss attempting to reprimand his twisted employee, he fails as Dylan Dark continues his appalling acts of violence on a well-respected veteran of the business, Kevin Rayne. After injuring the experienced athlete, Dylan continues to deliver destruction until Sam Pullen decides to fight fire with fire. The president gives the villain a taste of his own medicine at the first pay-per-view, Impulse, forcing Dylan into a street fight with the returning Devin Parker. Devin Parker. Most known for his work in Sam's previous wrestling company, Adrenaline, Devin is a tag team specialist, a part of the Infliction. Teaming with his brother, Travis, the team were a former metal band who rocked the previous days of wrestling. Toward the end of his run, he disposed of his anarchaic mohawk hairstyle and became a hardcore extremist. Gleefully using weapons to his advantage, Devin became fond of the lethal use of a crowbar in which knocked out multiple opponents. With Adrenaline closing its doors years ago, Devin's return promises a bloody battle between himself and the chaotic Dylan Dark. Impulse. The street fight between the two gets out of hand very quickly, as both men can't wait to inflict pain on the other. Being sent through the announce table early on in the fight, Dylan soon takes over offense and wraps a steel chair around his opponent's throat, hitting him with his signature move, the drive-by kick. Despite the major pain shared between both men, their desire to maim one another allows them to continue the match, leading to Devin's face being raked open by the return of Devin's vintage crowbar. Although blood gushes down Dylan's face, he remains resilient, still fighting against his ruthless, legendary opponent. With Devin in control, just moments away from ending it all with his finisher, the execution, Dylan takes advantage of a small opportunity and uses the crowbar to hit a low blow on his opponent. As Devin falls to his knees in agony, a sickening snigger crosses the face of Dylan as he licks the crowbar up and down with a menacing smile. He proceeds to smack the face of Devin with his own weapon. Poetically attacked by his own form of defense, Devin is pinned by his opponent, allowing Dylan to continue his dominance. Rayne of Terror. Dylan's constant display of power not only leads him to a savage victory over Devin, but leads him to believing he should be the next in line for a World Impetus Championship match against Dave Falcon. Despite his revolting attacks, Dylan's momentum cannot be argued as he consistently defeats opponent after opponent. As a result, Dylan finally gets what he wants, a match against the champion. Although not for the title, this is a key opportunity for Dylan to be seen as a serious threat to the industry. 2 steel chairs and an exposed turnbuckle cover later, Dave Falcon suffers his first loss in the company, creating more momentum and justification for Dylan Dark. With a challenger needed for the Hellbound pay-per-view, the top 2 contenders of Dylan Dark and Ricky Matthews compete for the chance to face the champion. As Ricky's persistence and tenacity grows throughout the match, his heart and willpower is too strong to compete against, allowing him to advance to the pay-per-view. With Matthews celebrating, it creates a world of disappointment and envy in the evil mind of our villain. Dylan's overbearing jealousy toward Ricky leads to a devastating beatdown on the new challenger. With Ricky calling out Dave Falcon for a face-to-face confrontation, he is attacked by Dylan Dark, not just with his fists, but with a chair. Attempting to repeat his previous acts of power, the villain decides to wrap the weapon around Ricky's head, preparing for the drive-by kick. However, Dylan's deplorable acts are countered by the interruption and return of Kevin Rayne. The veteran Kevin Rayne returns to beat down his attacker with multiple chair shots. Taking multiple shots to the body, Dylan escapes the ring in pain. As Dylan cowers from the ring, security hold back the legend from creating any more violence. With the high-flying, infuriated veteran wanting vengeance on his foe, Dylan finds himself heading into Hellbound after all, only this time in a no-holds-barred match against a vengeful legend of the business. Hellbound. In a backstage interview during the pay-per-view, Dylan calls out his opponent and calls him an old dog that won't stop barking. He promises that he will show Kevin and the world what will happen when someone tries to fight back and mess with his plans. A focused and almost emotionless Kevin Rayne is introduced moments before his match and is asked what he thinks about Dylan's words from earlier this evening. Kevin responds with a calm intensity, claiming to have lost his footing, lost his willpower, and has constantly been wondering if he should have had his final match years ago. This, Kevin states, was all because of Dylan Dark. Somewhere along the way, this desperation turned into aggression, and after seeing Dylan storm through the roster, he has realized that he will not be used as a stepping stone for anybody. He may be an old son of a bitch, but he isn't anywhere near his last match, and will be damned if he's gonna go out like that. He claims that if this is his final chapter, if this truly is his final hope of feeling like his old self, then he is going to fight until there is nothing left. The no-holds-barred match leads to emotional pain just as much as physical, as Dylan takes his time during the fight to call Kevin a has-been and an old man who should retire. Referring to his previous battle against Devin Parker, Dylan spears his opponent through the announce table. His poetic callbacks continue as he later locks Kevin's head in a steel chair, once again prepared to hit the drive-by kick. However, Rayne is able to dodge the attack. Irritated by the veteran's drive and passion, Dylan quickly halts Kevin's comeback. Slowing the momentum once more, the gears then turn in Dylan's head as he makes his way to the outside. With a devious plan in mind, he looks under the ring and pulls out a weapon. Not just any weapon, but Devin Parker's weapon, the crowbar. Taking his time, sizing up the veteran for a brutal strike, Dylan is countered yet again by his opponent. Kevin returns to life, firing back at his rival, and decides to get cute. He decides to take a page out of Dylan's dastardly book as he locks the previously used steel chair around Dylan's neck and super kicks the steel. Rayne is far from done as he hammers his final nail of redemption by hitting his finisher move, the Hurricane Rainer, on the steel chair, securing the victory. With Dylan attended by doctors, Kevin Rayne has found new life in his career. He then celebrates, ready for new beginnings, all while Dylan must regain his power. How the Mighty Have Fallen. As Kevin Rayne experiences a career regenesis, Dylan Dark is nowhere to be seen on the following episodes. His vacancy is not only due to the physical toll caused by Hellbound, but also due to his internal embarrassment, as he believes to have lost to a washed-up has-been like Kevin Rayne. Dylan's return comes in the form of competition against the up-and-comer known as Charlie Finch. During the match, Dylan vents his frustration of the previous loss he had, creating intense punishment. Despite his beatings, Charlie Finch is able to not only sustain the pain, but deliver some as well, creating further embarrassment for the tormented mind of Dylan Dark. Using cheap tactics to rid himself of Finch's counterattack, Dylan decides to mess around with the turnbuckle cover yet again. With the official trying to fix the tampered equipment, Dylan then pulls out Devon's crowbar once more. As Dylan attempts to hit his opponent with it, Finch is able to dodge the attack and quickly rolls up his opponent for a huge, shocking, surprising win. With Finch exiting quickly, Dylan is furious with his loss, kicking, screaming, and breaking anything he can at ringside. Officials try to calm him down and eventually send the emotional Dylan Dark backstage. After his loss, Dylan is once again on an impetus hiatus, recovering from the embarrassing defeat. Meanwhile, due to his recent winning streak, Finch hopes to compete for the Coast to Coast Championship, participating in a triple threat match in order to advance in the Coast to Coast title tournament. With disqualifications unavailable, Dylan believes this to be the perfect time to seek redemption, as he returns to attack his previous conqueror. Dylan finishes his attack by using his crowbar, finally hitting it straight on Finch's forehead. After a successful beatdown, Dylan believes to have gained justice to his previous loss, as he witnesses Finch lose his chance at the gold. 1 week after his brutal return, Dylan speaks in a backstage interview, claiming that he was supposed to come back and avenge his loss against Kevin Rayne. Instead, he was cheaply beaten by a no-named kid who shouldn't even be lacing his boots. Refusing to be backstabbed any longer, Charlie Finch interrupts the segment, trying not to show his injuries. Showing no fear, he gets in Dylan's face and dares his attacker to repeat his actions, only this time without attacking him from behind. Finch challenges Dylan to a Falls Count Anywhere match at the next pay-per-view, Rebellion. With Dylan shocked, Finch says that this no-named kid has a name, and it may not be known now, but will forever be remembered as the man who kicked Dylan's ass at Rebellion. Scowling at the heroic speech, Dylan accepts in anger, with the two opponents face to face and ready for the pay-per-view. Rebellion. Once again placed in a stipulation match, Dylan's mission to cleanse himself of his previous pay-per-view loss leads to a chaotic brawl. He constantly toys with his opponent and delivers painful moves to show his dominance. Despite Dylan's control of offense, Charlie continues to keep kicking out. From this, Dylan gets frustrated, increasing the intensity. However, Finch kicks out again and again with passion, refusing to be stomped out by the bully. Upset that his hand has yet to be raised, Dylan decides to up the ante, resorting to his newly fond crowbar to finish things. With Finch recuperating, Dylan is ready to swing the weapon, only to stop, seemingly out of sympathy. Having his broken down opponent right where he wants him, Dylan hits Charlie with the drive-by kick, knocking him out cold. Cocky with his act, Dylan drops the weapon and covers Finch. But the no-named kid kicks out yet again. With most men being shocked and outraged, Dylan decides to get to his feet instantly. He grabs the crowbar and smacks it in the face of Finch, solidifying a win. After the vicious ending, Dylan begins to leave until Finch grabs his foot, still showing fight. Outraged by the tenacity, Dylan grabs the crowbar again and hits his opponent with it, laying Finch out cold. Proud of his work, Dylan exits up the ramp and turns around to take one last look at his fallen opponent. However, the grin on Dylan's face turns to a frown as he sees Finch crawling slowly up the ropes. Stunned and irritated by his rival's determination, Dylan's smirk returns as he witnesses Finch tumble to the floor once more, defeated by his pain. As Finch lays in a fatigued mess, Dylan leaves, happy with his work. To the Pain. With their rivalry far from over, Dylan continues his diabolical intensity while Charlie Finch constantly fights from underneath, hoping to rise above at the pay-per-view To the Pain. As Finch's never say die attitude further increases, the pay-per-view holds both men in a last man standing match. After attacking his opponent before the bell, Dylan holds most of the momentum throughout the early parts of the contest. During the slow and punishing offense, Dylan sets up a table on the outside with evil intentions. Hoping to spear Finch off of the apron and through the wood, Dylan charges for a spear, only for Charlie to dodge the attack, sending Dylan through the ropes and crashing through the table by himself. With the official counting, Dylan barely gets up before the 7 count. Desperate to take advantage, Finch grabs his opponent and hits his finisher, the full effect, on the outside. As Dylan lays in huge pain, Finch is shocked to see his rival stand at the count of 8. Enraged, Finch follows his fatigued opponent back inside the ring and witnesses him crawl on his hands and knees. Noticing his opportunity, Finch gets poetic and hits his rival with his own drive-by kick. Being delivered insult to further injury, Dylan still gets up before the 10 count, barely able to walk. With Finch exhausted, he leans toward the turnbuckle in peril, wishing it all to be over. During this, Dylan crawls and leans over the apron, looking for something. With Finch composing himself, he approaches Dylan for one more bit of offense, only to be suddenly swatted with the surprise appearance of the crowbar. With Finch knocked out, the unbalanced Dylan recovers quickly. Furious with his opponent's tenacity, he grabs a chair and hits him with it repeatedly, unleashing his psychotic rage. Despite being pummeled with chair shots after a crowbar shot to the head, Finch slowly and painfully gets to his knees at the official's count of 8. Not allowing his opponent to get to his feet, Dylan grabs Finch and hits him with his own full-effect finisher, returning the favour of a stolen move. As Finch gets to his knees, it seems too late for him as the official is about to count to 10. However, Dylan stops the count. Holding his opponent by the head, Dylan wraps the mangled chair around Charlie's head and ends it all by hitting the drive-by on the metal. As the official begins the count, Dylan exits the ring and walks up the ramp, allowing the referee to end the match after counting to 10. With Dylan smirking on his way out, Finch gets medical help and placed on a stretcher. However, the ever-defiant Finch refuses to go out like that, as he walks up the ramp with little success, leaning on the officials and doctors. To the Pain climaxes the feud between Charlie and Dylan, for now. With the hero showcasing his heart and willpower, the villain represented his evil and sadistic acts. However, this wouldn't be the last time we see Dylan Dark on the pay-per-view. Weeks before To the Pain, Impetus crowned a new #1 contender for the Impetus title, Riki Matthews. Prepared to face Dave Falcon one more time for the title, it seemed as though Riki's efforts and patience would pay off. However, the title dream quickly turned into a nightmare as Riki was hit by a car in the parking lot. With Riki now injured and not being able to compete for the championship, a new challenger needed to be announced for the pay-per-view, all while Sam Pullen tried his best to investigate who was behind the wheel. Soon after Dylan Dark's last man standing match at To the Pain, Riki Matthews enters the pay-per-view with his wife and son, listing the injuries he sustained due to his attack from nearly 2 months ago. He states that every time he seems to taste success, it gets wiped out from underneath him. Either from dirty tactics or being attacked in a parking lot, Riki just can't seem to achieve his dream of becoming champion. However, he states that his attacker didn't get the job done, as he will be medically cleared to compete in just 2 weeks' time. Riki states that he will return and get the Impetus Championship no matter what. Looking to end his passionate speech, Riki is about to leave until he gets attacked by Dylan Dark. Riki's family exit the ring and look on from the outside in fear. Finishing his ambush on the already injured Riki Matthews, Dylan grabs the microphone and reveals to be the attacker, promising to take Riki out, this time for good. Dylan hits Riki with the drive-by kick and stands over his new enemy. However, the evil actions continue as he turns around to see Riki's wife and son looking on with fright. Dylan decides to approach them slowly. With evil in his mind, he brushes the hair of Riki's wife until security and doctors, led by Sam Pullen, stop him from proceeding. Furious with Dylan's actions, Sam sends him to the back, as the villain simply sniggers. The family and medical team tend to the hurt Riki Matthews, with Sam enraged, questioning why Dylan continues his menacing ways. Dark thoughts. Out to explain his actions the following week, Dylan explains that he is sick of Riki Matthews being placed as the next top-tier talent and the golden boy of Impetus. Now that Riki has been removed from the business, Dylan Dark can be rewarded for his domination, taking Riki's place as the next world champion. With Dylan ready to start a new chapter, he is confronted by the previous pages of Charlie Finch. Finch enters on stage, limping in pain due to the offense he sustained at the pay-per-view. After his actions last week at the pay-per-view, Finch has no trouble in calling Dylan Dark the biggest pile of shit that he has ever known. As Dylan smiles at the remark, Charlie refuses to let him get away with his actions and, as a result, dedicates a Dylan Dark beatdown for Riki Matthews. If Dylan's goal is all about the world title, Finch asks to make all the pain worthwhile and challenges Dylan to a #1 contenders match next week. Dylan sniggers at his damaged opponent and accepts the challenge. He promises that, just like Riki, Finch will be a broken man after he is done with him. Finch retorts, claiming that To the Pain was the first, last and only time he failed to get back to his feet. With next week's match made official, Dylan is going to have to kill Finch in order to keep him down. Dylan says he is more than happy to make that arrangement. With the title match up for grabs in their 4th encounter the following week, Finch and Dark trade offense equally until the villain takes over. Throughout his dominance, Dylan ignores the officials' rules and restrictions, being forced to release chokeholds and rope breaks after the referee's count of 4. During this, Finch shows his heart and defiance by constantly throwing punches, only to be knocked down by the oppressive Dylan. After ignoring the rules once again, Dylan is pulled to the side by the official, giving him his final warning. Refusing to listen and obliged to the rulebook, Dylan strikes the official with a solid punch to the face, knocking them down. Continuing his attack on Finch, Dylan hopes to repeat his evil ways by pulling out the crowbar, ready to use it on his opponent once again. With the referee still down and the weapon held high in the air, Dylan's violence is stopped due to the music and return of Riki Matthews. Riki walks and stands on stage with a limp, staring at his attacker. With Dylan shocked and the referee knocked out, Riki storms to the ring and seeks revenge. Returning with huge momentum, Riki hits his finishing move, the Mat Attack, on his new foe. With Riki exiting the ring instantly, the recovering official hasn't a clue of the return and instead witnesses Charlie Finch follow up with his finishing move, the Full Effect, finally defeating his rival and becoming the new challenger to the World Impetus title. Finally able to retaliate, Riki has screwed Dylan out of a title opportunity, awarding it to Finch in the process. Unsanctioned. With both men costing one another a world title opportunity, Ricky Matthews and Dylan Dark have their own agendas in taking each other down. Dylan's hatred for his rival has already been established. Sickened by the spotlight being placed upon Ricky, Dylan believes he should be seen as the next top-tier talent. Ricky's goal of redemption has been fueled not just by his meeting with an automobile, but based on Dylan's deplorable acts of touching his own wife. The feud between the two reaches an insane level of intensity, creating multiple impromptu brawls throughout the next few weeks and forcing security, staff and members of the roster to hold the enemies back from ripping each other apart. Due to their insistent need to play boggle with each other's heads, Ricky and Dylan are placed in a civil contract signing in the middle of the ring, hosted by the president, Sam Pullen. With security surrounding them, Ricky and Dylan are sitting on chairs with a table in front of them. With Sam standing at the end of the table, he states that after the past few months, he has witnessed firsthand what these men are capable of doing to each other. However, as a result, he needs to make sure that his company and business remains safe. Due to their recent and uncontrollable actions, Sam cannot afford to have these men compete against each other at the next pay-per-view, Supremacy. The president is aware that they want to beat the crap out of each other, but cannot let them fight under the Impetus banner, as it will cause liability in the hands of Impetus. Due to this, Sam explains that he has two options. The first is to refuse and cancel the match, ridding any chance of the two ripping each other to pieces. However, even though that strategy works on paper, the reality is Ricky and Dylan are going to stop at nothing to tear each other apart. Which leaves him with one more option. Make the match at Supremacy an unsanctioned match, where the only two men involved are responsible for the inevitable career-killing injuries of the other. On the table are the contracts that both men must sign in order to make that unsanctioned match happen. In order for both men to get revenge on the other, all they need to do is sign on the dotted line. However, there is one exception. After signing the contract for Supremacy, they also accept to not get physical with each other in any way until the event. If they fail to reach these agreements, they will not only be suspended, fined, and even sued, but their battle at the pay-per-view will be cancelled. Sam asks the two if they are willing to accept these terms. After staring intensely at one another the entire segment, the rivals nod in approval and are handed the contracts. Sam hands the contract to Dylan, where he gladly accepts and signs the contract in silence. Then, Ricky is handed the contract and speaks before signing. He claims that Dylan did more than just take away months of his career, as, while laying down in his own pool of blood at To the Pain, Ricky had to witness Dylan get in his family's face and caress the hair of his wife, all while powerless. Ricky promises that he will not be powerless at Supremacy, and will make sure to leave Dylan in his own pool of blood at the pay-per-view. With Ricky enraged, Dylan sniggers and applauds the hero's speech. He is insulted that, while people love Ricky's relentlessness, he has been just as relentless since the start of Impetus, and tells Sam that if he wants a star like that, then Dylan should have been the golden boy. The man chosen to be the main eventer, and the man destined for the world title in the first place. Ricky is disgusted and refuses to believe that all the beatdowns, the savage attacks, and the career life-threatening actions have simply been to obtain the world title. Dylan yells instantly, stating that everything he does has been for the World Impetus Championship, as he knows he deserves it most. Dylan makes his own promise, claiming that he will destroy Ricky at Supremacy and end up with the trophies he always wanted. That's right, trophies. The first trophy being the world title. The second trophy, Ricky's whore of a wife. Breathing heavily with rage, Ricky remains calm as he glares at the cocky Dylan. Smug and arrogant after his harsh words, Dylan points at Riki's contract, telling him to sign if he wants to settle their dispute. Staring at the contract, Riki is about to sign it with anger, only to exhale and calm himself down. Before signing, he reminds Dylan that when he signs this contract, he won't be able to touch him until he delivers the most painful, soul-crushing, flesh-tearing domination at Supremacy. That is, when he signs the contract. Flipping the table on his foe, Riki ambushes Dylan with Sam exiting the ring. Punishing Dylan further, Riki delivers a mat attack to his enemy through the table. After putting his hands on Dylan one last time, Riki then grabs the contract and signs it. Throwing the papers at Sam with rage, Riki exits with intensity while Dylan lays in pain. The unsanctioned match is set for Supremacy. For a Friend. The next episode hosts a backstage interview with Dylan, who is furious that someone like Ricky Matthews has been able to outsmart him. He condescends Riki, congratulating him for his master plan last week, only to warn his rival for what awaits him at the pay-per-view. If it were up to him, he'd be beating the hell out of Riki right now, shoving his crowbar so far up Riki's ass that his wife will be kissing metal. However, he must wait for his own redemption due to the stupid and ridiculous rule created by the president. Raising his voice to the interviewer, he asks how this is fair, asking what he's supposed to do until Supremacy. What is he supposed to do to get his Then he quickly silences himself, thinking of a devious plan with a snigger. Dylan chuckles and exits the scene with suspicion. Established as Riki Matthews' close family friend, the soon-to-be face of the women's division, Daria, is victorious in tag team action. Celebrating her win, Dylan halts the celebration with a microphone in hand. He casually walks to the ring and reminds us all that he is no longer able to get physical with Riki Matthews. Furthermore, being outsmarted and put through a table last week didn't exactly make him happy. To cheer himself up, he's decided to get some retribution by sticking it to Riki in the best way possible. Dropping the microphone, Dylan kicks Daria's knee, sending her kneeling to the mat and allowing him to deliver the drive-by kick. Attacking his rival's personal friend, Dark exits the ring instantly without hesitation as referees come to aid Daria. After a commercial break, Sam Pullen and other members of the roster are tending to Daria in the ring, with the commentators disgusted by Dylan's actions. With a replay of the recent events being played, Dylan is then seen walking through the backstage hallway with swagger, proud of his actions. He then hears the loud voice of Riki coming from the other side in the distance, yelling at his rival. Held back by other roster members, the rivals approach one another, yelling with rage. Dylan begs Riki to do something about his actions, reminding him of their match at Supremacy and the rules that are placed upon them. The two go face to face, being forced away by those around them. As Riki is escorted away, he tells his rival that he is a dead man. As Daria's health is questioned throughout the night, we hope to get some answers as a shot of a medical room door is shown. The door opens with Sam Pullen exiting the room. Almost instantly, Sam is approached by an interviewer, asking the president what the medical update is on Daria. Sam simply states that she'll be fine, as she's a tough son of a bitch. With the interviewer asking what he plans on doing about Dylan's actions, Sam states that he was more than happy to call off the match at Supremacy, as the tensions have clearly gotten too high. However, after speaking to Daria, she has other ideas. Seeing as Dylan wants to take a shortcut to get to Riki, he claims that Daria wants her own form of redemption and, per her request, she will get to face Dylan Dark next week. Daring Daria. With the Daria vs. Dylan match set to take place the following week, Dylan interacts with his previous enemy, Charlie Finch. As his match with Daria approaches, Dylan asks Finch for the location of his opponent, aspiring to deliver a simple message. Affirming that he knows where she is, Finch quickly refuses to tell Dylan of her location. Dylan sarcastically wonders why Finch is so hostile towards him. Finch interrupts and asks why Dylan is doing all of this. We get it, he's chaotic, he's destructive. But if this is all for the world title, it has gotten him absolutely nowhere, as Charlie Finch is now the one competing for the title at the pay-per-view and not Dylan. Chuckling yet again, Dylan almost feels sorry for Finch and claims that he just doesn't get it. He explains that Ricky Matthews is the golden boy of Impetus, and, with him eliminated from the company, there will be no other choice for everyone to accept him as the next Impetus champion, regardless of who is victorious at Supremacy. With that said, who knows, maybe he and Finch will meet each other again soon. Later in the night, Dylan finally finds Daria and approaches her in her locker room. She becomes tense as he confronts her, asking him what he wants. Calming the situation, Dylan politely lets her know that last week was nothing personal, as he was merely sending a message to her good friend, Mr. Matthews. However, Dylan claims that he didn't ask for this match tonight, she did. As a result, he has no problem in destroying her, just like he will destroy Riki at Supremacy. Daria stands up to her opponent, literally, telling him that she isn't afraid for her match and demands Dylan to bring his best shot. No matter what happens tonight, Dylan will get what he deserves at Supremacy. Raising his eyebrows with delight, Dylan agrees that he will indeed get what he deserves. He then advances slowly toward his opponent and brushes her hair softly, trying to make her uncomfortable. Smacking his hand out of the way, Daria wants to punch the bully in the face, only for Dylan to snigger as he walks off with calm cockiness. With the main event set to take place, Riki talks to Daria in the hallway, asking her to be careful against Dylan. Appreciating his care, Daria states that she can take care of herself and promises to leave some of Dylan for the pay-per-view. After sharing a hug, Daria exits with Riki worried only to be stopped by his grinning rival. Unable to touch one another, Dylan dares his rival to jeopardize their match next week and punches lights out right here, right now. Refusing to give in, Riki claims that he'll let Daria take care of him tonight, and claims he will enjoy every moment of it, as he will be out there to support her. Dylan is glad to hear the news, as Riki can watch him destroy his friend without being able to do anything about it, making it obvious that every bruise he leaves on her body is his fault. Dylan leaves in confidence while Riki exhales with irritation. The intergender match shows an equal battle between the two, only for Dylan to take over offense. While in control, Dylan teases Riki, who supports his friend at ringside. The villain sarcastically begs Riki to punch him, knowing full well of the stipulations in play. The confidence of Dylan continues until Daria counters his strikes, leading to a comeback. As the female begins to shift her momentum, Dylan stops it all with a spear. Laughing at his opponent's endurance, Dylan then stares at Riki, leaning his head to one side. His laugh then becomes slightly more unstable and maniacal as he spears Daria not once more, but twice more. Daria is done. With the match over, Dylan turns his head to the other side and stares at his intense rival. The villain covers to win, only for Daria to kick out. Shocked and excited, Riki stands on the apron to cheer Daria on. As the official tries to restrain Riki's excitement, Dylan exits the ring with frustration and grabs a crowbar, threatening to use it as he stares down Daria. With Riki getting off the apron, he witnesses Dylan raise the weapon in the air, threatening to use it on his friend. As all hope seems lost for Daria, Riki stands on the apron yet again and grabs the crowbar, stopping Dylan from doing any further damage. Snatching the weapon away from a shocked and furious Dylan, the villain turns around to get huge offense from an enraged and pained Daria. Hitting her Harlem Hangover finisher, she wins, beating the villain. Riki proudly celebrates with his friend as he has all the momentum heading into the pay-per-view. All seems great until Daria is attacked by Dylan yet again. As Daria lays in pain, Dylan stares at Riki, taking advantage of their rules and regulations. As Daria struggles to get to one knee, Dylan walks backwards and sets up for the drive-by, all while staring into the eyes of his rival. Refusing to see his friend get hurt, Riki begins to charge for Dylan, only for Daria to stop him. In pain, she begs him to wait for Supremacy. With Riki shocked to hear his friend's demands, Dylan sniggers and decides to quickly hit the drive-by on Daria after all. While standing over the fallen female, Dylan stares at Riki as he takes care of his friend. Shaking with anger, Riki still refuses to touch his rival. Dylan exits, proud of his menacing actions, all with Riki chomping at the bit for the pay-per-view. As the president enters trying to take care of Daria, Riki furiously stares at his boss, blaming Sam for what he has created. Supremacy. After the carjacking, hair-brushing actions performed by Dylan Dark, Ricky Matthews is seen backstage at the pay-per-view, preparing to maim and incarcerate his biggest rival to date. Aiming to achieve redemption for his career, his friend and his family, Ricky's wait to get physical with his enemy has finally come to an end. Many dangerous and lethal scenes occur during the unofficial contest, leading both men to a bloody state, enduring highly impactful moves, strikes and weapons throughout the arena. After beating the crap out of each other, the rivals make their way to the stage and continue with their war. Using the stage beams to his advantage, Dylan has a menacing idea and drags the limp body of Riki up high on the arena set. Attempting to throw his foe off the structure, Riki reverses and tackles Dylan off of it, sending both men down to the floor. As the rivals lay in gargantuan pain, the official can do nothing but try to support the opponents. After a moment of stunned silence, Riki starts to move and barely places his arm on Dylan. The official notices this and counts to 3, allowing Riki to win the match. Both men lay in pain, with officials and medical staff soon aiding both men. With Riki moving, the medical team provide a stretcher for Dylan, who is motionless. Riki struggles to stand as referees, Daria and even Riki's wife enter from the backstage area to accompany the victor. As Riki slowly exits, Dylan is stretchered out. With the rivalry climaxed, the evil Dylan Dark has been vanquished, with Riki awarded the much-needed revenge. Dylan Dark apologizes? Psych! The rivalry is far from over, and it combusts again, literally in the same night. With Riki on a doctor's bed later in the pay-per-view, he is being treated after his hellacious battle. As Daria and Riki's wife look on, worried and in fear, the scene seems to be calm as the war is over. However, the situation turns deadly once again as Dylan Dark storms into the room and attacks Riki from out of nowhere. Already in huge pain, Dylan throws his rival around the medical room, asking if he thinks their feud is over. As Daria and the wife scream in fear and rage, Dylan remorselessly chucks the injured Riki out of the medical room and into the hallway. Fixed on continuing the assault, he finally gets stopped and held back by security, demanded to stop by the enraged Sam Pullen. With the tension settling and the show continuing, the commentators later begin to speak of the recently returned tag team of Devin and Travis Parker, The Infliction. As a replay shows their return, the flashback suddenly stops as cameras notice action on the stage. Interrupting the pay-per-view once again, Dylan Dark and Riki Matthews are now brawling on stage with members of staff trying to break the fight. The rivals lead to the ring, with security attempting to break them apart. Still, However, Dylan obliterates Riki with the spear, leaving him laid out once again. The villain begins to leave as members of staff seem to exit, all while medical personnel attend to the knocked out Riki. As Dylan slowly exits up the ramp, he turns around with a snigger and approaches the apron with evil intentions. Refusing to stop the violence, he grabs his crowbar from underneath the ring. Threatening those around him with the weapon, Dylan easily makes his way back into the ring and proceeds to line up Riki, ready for an attack. With the staff and security begging not to see it, Dylan hits his rival right in the side of the head. Dylan Dark finally seizes his offense and begins to exit with vanity. With panicked doctors tending to our now bleeding hero, Riki's wife arrives in the ring, attending to her husband with tears streaming down her face. As the heartbreaking scene continues, Dylan sees this on screen and has yet another evil thought. Turning around slowly, he advances toward the ring again. Refusing to stop his remorseless actions, Dylan once again threatens his crowbar to empty the ring. However, Riki's wife remains on her knees, still caring for her husband and unaware of her loneliness. She turns her head to see a grinning Dylan who wiggles his fingers to say hello. Dylan's smirk turns to confusion as the wife shows no fear. Instead, she shows her anger as she screams at him, asking him if he feels like a big man. Listening to the wife's harsh words, the villain is in shock as he slowly realizes what he's done. Dylan throws the crowbar away from himself, almost in disgust, shock. Covering his mouth with his hands, Dylan tries to help the situation, only for Riki's wife to push him away and yell with even more fury. Saddened, Dylan begins to leave the situation, only to turn around instantly and hit the wife with the drive-by kick. Dylan leaves immediately without any emotion as staff quickly storm to the ring to tend to Riki and his wife. Dylan Dark apologizes? Seriously this time. 7 days after the horrific actions, Impetus anticipates an apology from Dylan Dark. The villain slowly enters and talks calmly, speaking of the unforgivable actions he performed last week. Seemingly disappointed in his actions, Dylan claims that he will not apologize for anything. He sends a message to the currently hospitalized Ricky Matthews, telling him that he deserved every punch, every kick, and every bit of a pain, physical and emotional, that he was given last week. Not only did Riki deserve everything, but so too did his gorgeous wife, deserving to have her face kicked off by the drive-by kick. Disgusting everyone with his regretless actions, Dylan is surprised to be interrupted by Daria. With the family friends seemingly out for justice, Daria asks how Dylan could be so heartless about his actions, asking if he even has a sympathetic bone in his body. Clearly having no respect for anybody but himself, Dylan is verbally abused by Daria. She states that he doesn't know what damages he caused to Riki's family. He doesn't know what it's like to be a husband and a father because he doesn't know what it's like for someone to even love him. Daria gets brutal with her insults, claiming that Dylan will always be alone. He will always lash out at others because deep down in that vile, tormented body of his, he knows that he will never have a life as good as Riki Matthews. Most people would be scared to confront Dylan with such an insulting speech, but not Daria. In fact, she has no problem coming out here, getting right in Dylan's face and telling him that he is the most pathetic piece of shit she has ever laid eyes on. Growling at Daria's harsh words, Dylan reacts poorly and smacks the microphone away from her hand. With Daria unfazed and the two ready to get physical, the luchador team of El Fuego enter to defend their female friend. As the trio threaten Dylan with a 3-on-1 attack, Sam Pullen halts the scene. The president wants to ensure that no more unsolicited chaos takes over his show. Due to this and Dylan's recent actions needing to be punished, Sam places Daria and El Fuego in a 3-on-1 handicap match tonight against Dylan Dark. The match hosts a well-deserved beating to Dylan Dark from the heroes, happy to see their opponent in agony and fear. However, with Dylan in range of Daria's Harlem hangover, he quickly rolls out of the ring to escape his fate. As the villain stumbles around the ring area, Daria hunts for Dylan as she follows him to the outside. Attempting to throw him back in the ring, Daria is suddenly smacked in the gut by Dylan and his use of the quickly equipped crowbar. With the officials seeing this and calling for a disqualification, El Fuego try to avenge their partner, only to be taken out by their opponent with the excessive use of the tool. Laying out all of his opponents, Dylan drags Hernando Listillo into the ring and cracks a smile, realizing his opportunity to cause even more damage. He looks down at the fallen El Fuego member and raises his crowbar in the air, ready to hammer it down in the face of the luchador. Heroically, Daria drags her partner out of the ring before any more damage can be done. She escapes with her team in pain as Dylan looks on in evil joy. With Dylan creating more threatening dominance, it is revealed that Riki Matthews will return next week. He will notify us of his current condition and his wife's injury. The question remains, will he be furthering his issues with Dylan Dark, or will his up-and-coming career be fading into an early retirement? Riki Returns. Our hero's statements are promoted throughout next week's episode. Now the time has finally come. The music of Riki Matthews is heard and, after a while, our hero appears. However, the hero quickly turns into a villain, as the man walking on stage is none other than Dylan Dark. Delighted to disappoint the crowd, he cuts off the music halfway down the ramp and claims to have his own medical update on Riki's wife. He announces that she is still in a medical facility, unable to get sleep. Not only due to the pain, but due to her constant flashbacks of Supremacy, repeatedly seeing the final images of Dylan's boot being printed on her face. With Dylan sniggering, he claims that soon Riki's wife will be in a nice, comfortable, warm bed, getting the rest that she needs. However, she won't be laying in bed with Riki, she'll be laying in bed with him. Before Riki comes out to get some sort of revenge, Dylan pulls out his crowbar, warning his rival of the actions delivered to Daria last week. Riki's theme plays yet again, allowing us to see the intense hero stand on stage. As rage builds, he stares at his armed rival and pulls out a baseball bat. Equipped with his own weapon, Riki storms to the ring and battles Dylan Dark. However, security once again come to break the fight. After a quick brawl, the president rushes to the scene, demanding the two to stop the physicality. Enraged with the rivals, he watches Riki and Dylan being pulled apart from each other. As a result, Sam decides to confine them within one space. One place where they can't brawl around the arena and throw themselves off of stuff. Sam sets up a steel cage match for next week's main event. Security hold the opponents from each other, with each man talking trash, leading into next week. Rage in the Cage. Advertising the career-altering feud throughout the next episode, the rivals are ready to be locked inside the four walls of steel. Dylan enters with slow movement, preparing himself for the war in which he will endure. However, he gets attacked by Riki on the ramp, being chucked into any object seen around him. The two brawl on the outside, with Riki delivering most of the damage. Driven to destroy his enemy before even stepping into the cage, our hero sets up two tables on the outside, planning to deliver huge carnage. With Riki placing Dylan on the furniture, he averts his attention to the top of the cage and decides to risk it all. After climbing the cage and standing on the top of it, Riki is ready to finish the war before it even starts, as he prepares for a huge dive onto his rival. About to jump, Riki's moment is denied as Dylan bails from the tables and stumbles away from the fight, attempting to flee from the arena. With Riki in pursuit, he reaches his rival, only for Dylan to have baited him for a countering blow. Obtaining offense up the ramp, Dylan looks back at the cage, realizing that he should trap his enemy. Chucking Riki into the steel, the match officially starts. Unsurprisingly, the foes battle hard, using the cage as a weapon and taking each other to the limit. Countering Riki's explosive moves, Dylan refuses to take any more punishment as he's had enough of the pain. Hoping to end the war, Dylan starts to climb up the cage to escape. However, Riki follows him up and the two battle on top, risking it all yet again. Trading strikes and fumbling their way around the steel beams, their immense hatred causes them both to fall off the cage together through the previously built tables on the outside. With both men laying in pain, the bell rings, causing much confusion. The in-ring official panics to be let out of the locked cage. The secondary official, on the outside, unlocks the cage as quick as possible, with both officials approaching the obviously hurt opponents. With doctors coming to help, the officials determine the match as a draw due to both men crashing to the floor at the same time. The night ends with the rivals not only in pain, but unable to truly end their war. Forgive and forget. Despite a vicious and destructive war in and out of the steel cage, it seems as though the blood feud between Dylan and Riki is far from over. Next week's episode promotes the villain calling out the hero, seemingly leading to a physical backlash. Returning from a commercial break, Dylan Dark is seen in the ring, ready to call out his rival. However, he has a line of security in front of him, from one corner of the ring to the other. With cuts and bruises all over him, the calm and hurt Dylan decides to talk about the steel cage match last week, and how his rivalry with Riki has yet to be settled. More importantly, it may never be settled. The more Dylan thinks about the situation, the more he realizes that he and Riki are determined to throw their health away, their careers away, and their livelihoods away just to get vengeance on one another. As a result, Dylan calls out Riki, not for a fight, but for a talk, a conversation between two men in order to settle their differences. Seemingly genuine, Dylan waits for Riki's music to be played. Entering with just as many bruises and cuts as Dylan, Riki walks slowly down the ramp with anger, pain, and caution. He allows Dylan to talk, suspicious of his intentions. Dylan admits to his faults, acknowledging that the things he said and done have been brutal, hurtful, and disrespectful. He claims that Riki has had every right to react the way he has, hence tonight's security. Raising his voice, Dylan claims that most men would say that the protection isn't for themselves but for their opponent. But this time is different. He admits that the security is here to protect him, as he's afraid of what Riki will do to him next. Calming himself, Dylan simply wants the issues with Riki to stop. He's had enough of the fighting and asks his rival to put it all in the past and forget about it. Taking a while to answer, Riki speaks of his experiences over the last few months. From Dylan's jealousy of the world title to Riki spending way too much time on a hospital bed. From the Unsanctioned match to the beatdown after it, all the way to Dylan kicking his own damn wife in the face. Locking he and Dylan inside of a cage should have settled their war, but instead, Dylan once again got away with his despicable actions as they both crashed through two tables last week. After all of that, Dylan just wants to end it all, just because he's had enough? After everything Dylan has done, he just hopes that it can all just go away? Riki calmly declines Dylan of that privilege, claiming that their feud is going to end under his terms and his rules. Justice for being robbed of the world title will be created. Redemption for the family line that Dylan has crossed will be achieved. Riki will wait no longer to obtain both, as he will be served justice and redemption right here, right now. One by one, Riki beats down the security in front of him, with Dylan in fear, ordering them to do something. Taking out his final security guard, Riki turns around to see Dylan already out of the ring, spinelessly retreating from a confrontation. As the villain escapes with fear, he is halted by the music of the President. Sam Pullen enters instantly with fury, telling the two that their rivalry needs to be settled. If an unsanctioned match and a damn steel cage match didn't get the job done, he will need to bring back something he thought he'd never see again. Shocked to be making this announcement, Sam reveals that at Unleashed, Riki and Dylan will go to war inside the return of the Dome. Dylan is scared for the next pay-per-view, with Riki showing an evil grin. Dome Sweet Dome. Unexperienced for what the Dome presents, the enemies have a chance throughout the next week's episode to get familiar with their eventual surroundings. Previously recorded, the rivals are separately placed in the structure, able to feel its presence in hopes to envision what the pay-per-view will bring. The scene is broadcasted on the next episode 1 week before Unleashed. The Dome is a cold and eerie place to be located in. The circular cage of steel is not only a large, lidless enclosure, but unnerves any unwanted guests with its sharp and lethal barbed wire in which wraps around its body. With shots of Dylan stepping into the Dome for the first time, he gets close to the steel, almost touching it, seductively. He has a separate interview, expressing his feelings of being inside the belly of the beast. Dylan says that he realized that the Dome was actually a lot like him. Cold, unforgiving, and debilitating. Wanting his feud with Riki to have always come to this, he salivates to think of what destruction he may cause. Although intimidated by the Dome, he's excited to do putrid and horrible things to Riki inside of it, and can't wait to show Sam Pullen why, all along, he was and is the greatest star in this company. Riki's first glance at the structure is shown later in the episode, as we witness him simply sitting in the middle of the ring, looking around at what soon awaits him. Having his own interview to express his feelings, Riki claims that, after researching Adrenaline's previous Dome matches, he fears what awaits him at Unleashed. He understands the mayhem and carnage that will occur at the Dome. He explains the beautiful irony of what the Dome match represents, as it will create just as much chaos in one night than the entirety of the last 4 months. Assuming that Dylan is excited for the pay-per-view, Riki believes that his rival hasn't thought about the negatives of the situation, claiming that there is no way out for either of them. With nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, Riki fears for his career and livelihood, but welcomes his chance with justice and redemption. Unleashed. The highly anticipated main event finally comes. As both Dylan and Riki enter with massive nerves and caution, they lock eyes in the ring, ready for their rivalry to finally climax. Then the Dome lowers, slowly surrounding the rivals. With Riki clearly intimidated, he remains staring at his rival, aware of what is happening. However, Dylan freaks out a little more, visibly anxious about what is confining him. With nowhere to run or hide, Riki and Dylan analyze their environment in their own separate ways. The bell rings, leaving the rivals remaining still. As each opening second passes, Riki begins to shake with rage, finally able to get redemption on his attacker. As Dylan looks at the steel and his enemy with anxiety, he knows he must fight in order to survive. The two charge into one another, throwing fists and ready to put an end to their rivalry. The Dome steel is used to tear the flesh off each opponent. With both men bleeding throughout the contest, they symbolically reference the moments of their rivalry during the match. Dylan plays with Riki's hair, reminding his rival of the way he toyed with his wife. With Dylan in physical and emotional control, he tries to use the crowbar on his rival, only for Riki to block and counter the attack with the return of his baseball bat. After all the chaos, Riki calls back to the steel cage match and dives onto Dylan through 2 tables on the outside of the ring. With both men fatigued, they still continue to kick out of each other's huge shots. With Dylan kicking out of Riki's mat attack for a second time, Riki is in shock. He then sees the dropped crowbar and finds himself in an insane and evil mindset, eventually striking Dylan down with it. With Dylan still kicking out, Riki steps up to brutality and irony as he locks a chair around the head of his rival. With Riki ready to hit the drive-by kick, Dylan reverses it, leading into another back-and-forth fistfight between the two. Eventually, Riki gets the upper hand and finally hits the drive-by with the chair locked around Dylan Dark's head. With Dylan still kicking out, Riki hopes to end the feud by locking in his submission, the Hyperlock. Dylan remains in the hold for a while until Riki breaks Dylan's arm. Dylan must tap out. After a 40-minute massacre, Riki emerges with the win, yet losing gallons of blood. With Dylan being attended to by doctors, Riki lays in fatigue, finally rid of the evil Dylan Dark. Dylan gets stretchered out with a broken arm as Riki limps out in pain. Condemned. With Riki getting retribution on his biggest rival, his war with Dylan Dark is finally over. As our hero moves on to competing for the World Impetus title against Dave Falcon, Dylan Dark is nowhere to be seen. Instead, a new character appears on the following episode, a masked, creepy man named Condemnation. Holding a baby doll in which controls him in and out of the ring, Conrad goes on to destroy his opponents with ease, using his vicious snapmare/curb stomp finisher move. Grabbing his opponent in a cravat and then sending them face first into the mat, Conrad follows up with a blackout, stomping their already injured head into the ground yet again. He calls this the Condemnation. With Conrad using his baby doll to build some disturbing momentum, it doesn't take too long for one freak to be confronted by another, as the monstrous demon known as Scar interrupts Conrad's victory. Prepared to determine who the better psychopath truly is, Scar is rejected the chance as Conrad bails the ring and cowers from the fight. Although not appearing at the 1-year anniversary spectacular, it is announced on this pay-per-view that Impetus's next episode will see Scar challenge Conrad once again, and this time Scar will only accept one answer. Conned. Rocking back and forth in the boiler room, the disturbed Scar reveals that after years of torture, he has never been able to understand the mindset of a coward. Scar refers to Conrad Damnation as a man that is so similar to him, yet so different at the same time. Scar searches while Con hides. Scar fights for his alive sister, whereas Conrad fights for a lifeless doll. As their match approaches, he wants Conrad to know that he can hide, but he can't run. With the monsters advertised to do battle throughout the night, the moment has arrived. Scar enters, anxious for his match with Conrad as he paces in the ring with impatience. Then, Conrad's music is heard with the lights going out. Soon, a spotlight hits the center of the stage, revealing a still and motionless Conrad who holds his doll. Impatient and insulted, Scar exits the ring instantly to beat down Conrad on stage. However, Conrad is revealed to be merely a dummy. Fooled by the trickery, Scar yells and screams with embarrassing rage as Con's cowardly mind games continue. As the two monsters refrain from physical contact, the following episode hosts a 20-man battle royal in order to determine the new #1 contender for the Coast to Coast title. Distracted by their multiple opponents, the monsters are unable to get physical. With 17 men eliminated, 3 men remain in the battle royal. Scar and Conrad finally meet in the middle of the ring, ready to engage in combat. However, they are interrupted by the final member of the battle royal, the fabulously annoying Johnny Fabuloso. As the male model remains uneliminated, he attempts to encourage his final opponents to fight, tearing each other to pieces in hopes to crown himself as the next gorgeous challenger. However, the monsters glare at Johnny, yelling intensely at him to the point where he casually and calmly eliminates himself, wanting nothing to do with the rivals. The monsters finally battle, leading to Conrad gaining control. That is until Scar grabs his throat. About to be hit with Scar's finisher, the Resurrection, Conrad counters into his Snapmare Curb Stomp combo, the Condemnation, and then hits a quick spear. In control, Conrad prepares himself for an attack, locating himself in the corner. As Scar recovers, getting to one knee, Conrad takes advantage of the situation and delivers the drive-by kick. With the commentators confused, Conrad then grabs a crowbar from under the apron. He waits for Scar to recover and hits him in the face with the weapon. As the familiar actions perplex the commentators even more, Conrad then takes his mask off to reveal the identity of Dylan Dark. Dylan chuckles like a madman, only to blast Scar in the face yet again with the crowbar, sending the monster over the top rope and eliminating him. After a 2-month absence, Dylan Dark is now the #1 contender for the Coast to Coast Championship. A dark return. Entering next week as the new #1 contender to Charlie Finch's Coast to Coast title, Dylan speaks about his previous encounter inside the Dome and how he hasn't been the same since. In fact, he hasn't been seen since. He didn't decide to mask himself due to an injury or embarrassment or even humiliation. Instead, he masked himself as Conrad Damnation, purely to see how this place would exist without him. Since covering his face, Dylan thinks that the company has fallen without him as the vocal point. He hates how the world title is in the wrong hands of Dave Falcon. He hates how Ricky Matthews has ascended to even huger heights because of their feud, and, more importantly, hates how Charlie Finch's Tinder profile is more important than the title that he holds. Dylan warns Finch that the fun and games are now over, as he has the most dominant and destructive man on his back. Advising the champion to worry less about current love life events with Rachelle, he reminds Finch of what he did to Scar last week and how he took out the biggest monster in the company. If Dylan can eliminate a creature like that, he asks what hope Charlie has to retain his title. Continuing his self-motivation, Dylan is stopped by an arena blackout. With the arena soon lightened up, Scar appears and stands in the ring and quickly attacks Dylan. The fight spills to the outside, where Dylan attempts to retreat, leading to the backstage area. With Dylan trying his best to counter and escape the wrath of Scar, the fight enters the parking lot. After slowing down the monster with a drop kick to the knee, Dylan hides in the parking lot as Scar searches for his rival. With the scene reaching an eerie silence, Scar looks behind boxes, cars and trucks, only to be unsuccessful in finding his eliminator. Standing in fury, Scar seems to have given up his search, only for Dylan to attack the monster with a crowbar shot to the skull. As Scar lays knocked out in the parking lot, Dylan is almost shocked to see the damage he's caused. Refusing to believe the monster is no longer a threat, Dylan continues his dominance as he opens the trunk of a car and pulls out a body bag? Contemplating his actions, Dylan ignores his conscience and wraps Scar in the body bag. Zipping it up, the monster starts to move, yelling and screaming, only for Dylan to smack the bagged body with his crowbar, silencing his rival. Lifting the dead weight, Dylan puts Scar in the trunk of the car and slams it shut. Holding his mouth with his hands, Dylan suppresses his fears and decides to start the car and drive out of the venue. 7 days after the insane actions of Dylan Dark, the Coast to Coast champion Charlie Finch is in action. Facing the athlete upstart known as Jarvis Banks, Finch not only impresses the fans with a spirited victory, but impresses the flirtatious Rachelle, who observes at ringside. With Jarvis leaving in pain and defeat, the champion celebrates with happiness. Promised a match-winning kiss, Finch turns around to see Rachelle already in the ring, timidly awaiting her lips to be locked. Right before the couple's first form of intimacy, the scene is interrupted by the dastardly Dylan Dark. Dylan stands on stage and judges his future opponent, reminding Finch as to who he will be facing for the Coast to Coast title at Impulse 2. He claims that their battles in the past must have rocked his head a little too hard, as he seems to not be taking Dylan seriously at all. Instead of preparing for the most challenging contest of his life, Dylan thinks that Finch is spending all of his time and effort trying to get in bed with a 5 out of 10 at most. Insulted, Finch is about to exit the ring only for Rachelle to lightly hold his arm, asking him not to leave. Dylan sniggers and advises Finch to listen to his girlfriend, claiming that while he was getting in Rachelle's pants last week, Dylan was busy obliterating the biggest monster in Impetus. After showing a replay of last week's parking lot brawl, Dylan states that he drove off to dispose of the lifeless body that was Scar, leaving him to rot, ironically tossing him in a nearby river. It is this tenacity and intensity that makes Dylan believe that he will win the Coast to Coast Championship at Impulse 2. As Finch shows concern for his title, Dylan provides a further example of why he will win the title at the pay-per-view. Finch witnesses Dylan strike down the exiting Jarvis Banks, hitting the Snapmare Curb Stomp combination, the Condemnation. Threatening the champion, Dylan exits with Finch and Rachelle worried for what is to come. Mock the Week. 2 weeks before Impulse 2, Charlie Finch plans on reacting to Dylan Dark's threat from last week. With the champion seemingly anxious about his title match, Finch flips the switch as he enters to Dylan Dark's music, impersonating his challenger. With no fear, he mimics Dylan's entrance, mocking his opponent's voice and the way that he talks. Acting as Dylan Dark, Finch states how deadly, destructive, and dominant he truly is, and how the only 3 words he seems to know are deadly, destructive, and dominant. He claims to call people Mr. and Mrs. not because he's sophisticated, smart, or threatening, but because he's so damn dumb he can't remember anybody's first name. Finch also mocks Dylan's spear, saying that he genuinely thought it was cool to call it Dark Times at one point in his oh-so-awesome career. Finishing his impersonation, Finch claims that he may be looked down upon for his recent fun with Rachelle, but states that he prefers to have fun rather than come out week after week with a crowbar stuck up his ass. He tells Dylan that he is having the time of his life as the Coast to Coast champion and will further that enjoyment when he retains his title at Impulse 2. Finch understands that Dylan Dark is a badass son of a bitch, but states that he is the Coast to Coast champion, which is nothing to roll your eyes at. He knows what Dylan is capable of and has witnessed firsthand what he can do. However, with a beautiful girl to motivate him and with the title on the line, Finch won't be getting up from Dylan's offense, as he refuses to be put down in the first place. The champion's confidence leads to an interruption by the challenger himself. Dylan enters, irritated with Finch's impersonation and carefree attitude. He reaches the bottom of the ramp and pulls out the crowbar, ready for an attack, only for Ricky Matthews to stop the scene. The new world champion, Ricky Matthews, halts the eventual ambush and claims that if Dylan Dark has any balls, he will drop the crowbar right now. He can see that Finch and Dylan want to fight, 2 weeks before their title match at Impulse 2. Due to this, and Ricky not scheduled for a match tonight, Ricky challenges the two to a triple threat match right here, right now, out of nowhere. Dylan's snigger turns to a frown while Finch is in excitement. Without a chance to respond, Ricky charges after his previous rival. Running into the ring, hoping to escape, Dylan gets struck down by Charlie Finch, leading to the two heroes gladly attacking their enemy. Soon, an official runs to the ring to not only separate the heroes, but to ring the bell to start the impromptu triple threat match. A shocking triple threat match is seen as Finch and Ricky beat down Dylan. Disposing their enemy to the outside, the heroes eventually fight a respectable battle, keeping Dylan out of the equation. Nearing the end of the match, Ricky hopes to tap Dylan out with his hyperlock, only to be denied the opportunity by his rebellious challenger, Greg Williams. From this distraction, Dylan delivers the familiar condemnation to Finch and pins the Coast to Coast champion. As Ricky loses and resumes his issues with Greg, Dylan has more than enough momentum heading into the pay-per-view, as he has now pinned the champion and pinned his opponent. Hell for Rachelle. With Dylan intimidating the couple, his chaotic and deranged actions continue as, on the next episode, he gets to choose his own opponent for the evening. With Rachelle preparing for her own exhibition match, it gets cancelled by the entering Dylan Dark. He announces that she will not be competing against her planned opponent tonight. The reason for this is simple, as Dylan's chosen opponent for the evening is Rachelle. With Rachelle forced into the match, Dylan brushes her hair and bars her in the corner. As the villain prepares for his despicable actions, Charlie Finch quickly charges out for the save, causing a disqualification as he attacks his challenger. Finch continues his attack on Dylan, but gets poked in the eye for his trouble. With Finch blinded, Dylan turns around and gets speared by Rachelle, showing her strength. The couple exit the ring quickly and are later seen recovering backstage. Seeing fear in Rachelle's eyes, Finch comforts his girlfriend after the disgusting acts of his rival, stating that as long as he's around, Dylan won't do anything to hurt her. As the two gaze into each other's beautiful eyes, Rachelle asks Finch to promise him that he'll kick Dylan's ass at Impulse 2. Finch says that he doesn't need to promise anything, as his title and his girl aren't going anywhere. With their relationship becoming more love-filled, Finch kisses Rachelle on the lips. The two are happy and walk off together, hand in hand, 1 week before the pay-per-view. Impulse 2. Although living in a dream relationship, Finch had to prepare for a nightmare opponent at Impulse 2. Asked for his opinions at the pay-per-view, Dylan claims that he could have easily dropped Finch's little trophy called Rachelle last week if he wanted to. Rachelle's spear hasn't affected his mindset at all, as it is actually further proof that Finch cannot protect himself. He claims that sickening and shocking actions will take place in just a matter of moments, as he will become the new coast-to-coast champion. During the match, Rachelle gets ejected as her encouragement for her boyfriend provides major distraction. As Rachelle unwillingly exits, Dylan sniggers, understanding that Charlie's cheerleader and motivation has been removed. Finch's determination and passion for both the gold and the girl is shown as he kicks out of Dylan's nasty moves like the spear and even counters the condemnation. After a shocking reversal, Finch starts to gain momentum, only to be cut off quickly by a furious Dylan. Dark immediately goes to the outside to grab his go-to weapon, the crowbar, and slowly paces in the ring, ready to use it. Ignoring the official's issue, Dylan raises the weapon only for it to be grabbed by the reappearing Rachelle on the apron. As the official is about to throw the match out due to Rachelle's reappearance, Dylan holds the referee's arm, forbidding the match from ending. Furious with the female interference, Dylan raises the weapon in order to use it on Rachelle. However, the official acts quickly and snatches the crowbar away from Dylan's hands. As the official goes to eject the weapon, Rachelle performs the unthinkable, as she kisses Dylan, further shocking us all as she delivers a spear to her boyfriend. With the referee unaware of what has just happened, he turns around to see Rachelle out of the ring and witnesses Dylan covering Finch for a pin. Confused with what has just happened, the official decides to count the current pin and crown a new champion. Sickening and shocking actions did indeed take effect, as Dylan and Rachelle exit as a unit, standing tall on the ramp, leaving Finch in shock and sadness. The explanation. The following week sees the happy new couple arrive on the scene. Rachelle explains her betrayal, claiming that Finch is a weak, desperate and unconfident boy which, although some may find cute, is nothing compared to Dylan's powerful, manly and dominant character. Dylan expresses that he is on top of the world as he slayed the demonic Scar, got the title and got the girl. With Finch coming out to further understand the situation, he is belittled and bullied by the new couple. told that he will never amount to the manhood and championship status that is owned by Dylan Dark. The couple leave a saddened Finch inside the ring, allowing him to witness a disgusting display of kissing at the top of the ramp. Finch's loss of both girl and gold fills his mind with desperation and depression, causing his mental angst to continue as he loses a rematch for the Coast to Coast title the following week. The downfall of Finch causes an increase in Dylan's momentum, as not only does he have a shiny championship and beautiful lady by his side, but soon finds himself competing for the World Impetus Championship against his old foe, Riki Matthews. With a triple threat announced for Reign Supreme, both Dave Falcon and Greg Williams have qualified for the pay-per-view, leaving Riki with his own opportunity to do the same, despite being the champion. With Riki facing his old rival and Sam Pullen trying not to seem biased towards his champion, the president puts Riki's title on the line, combined with his placement at the pay-per-view. Keen to defeat his biggest rival in the huge champion versus champion contest, Dylan is once again unable to compete with Riki's drive and willpower as he suffers another loss to his rival. Furious with yet another demise, Dylan decides to attack the world champion. Aided by his girlfriend, Dylan is handed a steel chair in order to make matters worse. Wrapping the steel around Riki's head, Dylan plans to execute the condemnation on his biggest rival. About to hit the devastating move, the lights go out. The presence of Scar is felt. On the screen are images of Scar with the monster saying, "Vengeance will be mine." The lights return, leaving Dylan and Rachelle worried for Scar's presence. Then they become petrified as a body bag falls from the ceiling and lands in the ring right in front of them. The return of Scar is teased and almost promised, with the couple bailing the ring with fear, wanting nothing to do with the ghostly return. Blood type. A week after the spine-tingling teaser return of Scar, a triple threat tag team match is promoted for the main event, placing Greg Gordo with Vipernip, Dave Falcon with Warren Jackson, and Riki Matthews having to align himself with Dylan Dark. Our villain is seen in his locker room throughout the night, alone. Biting his nails and stressing about the appearance of Scar, Dylan looks around with huge paranoia. Cautious of his surroundings, he jumps with fear as the locker room door is booted open. It turns out to only be Rachelle, who calms him down, simply arriving to give him his moisturizer. She tells Dylan to relax as he scratches his head and continues to bite his nails, worried that perhaps he didn't get rid of Scar after all. As he regrets not putting the monster to rest, he anxiously squirts a huge amount of moisturizer on his hands. As the couple realize this, Rachelle then sits her boyfriend down and has some bad news to deliver to him. Her plans of gaining protection from the president, Sam Pullen, have failed, as Dylan will now be facing Scar at the next pay-per-view, Reign Supreme. With Dylan now panicking, Rachelle tries to give him a confidence boost heading into the main event tonight, silencing him with a passionate kiss. With Dylan trying his best to regain his bravado, Rachelle is happy to see the return of her boyfriend's confidence. She leaves the scene, telling him to prepare for the main event, only for us to see Dylan drop his macho act, still clearly scared. With the main event moments away, Dylan and Rachelle are once again seen in their locker room, stressing about Scar. With Dylan aggressively moisturizing his face due to his paranoia, he jumps at the sight of Riki Matthews, cowardly putting Rachelle in front of him due to his fear. Riki settles his rival and claims that he doesn't like this match any more than him, but is going to try his best to make the most of it. Dylan decides to blame Riki for Scar's return. He was so close to finally beating him last week, and asks why the hell he should align himself with someone who has taken him to hell. Riki looks at the human shield that is Rachelle, observing the situation. Combined with the pathetic Dylan Dark that now stands before him, and with Scar looking for blood at Reign Supreme, Riki believes that Dylan has no reason to push away any sort of alliances, no matter how temporary. Realizing his predicament, Dylan witnesses a peaceful Riki exit. The triple threat tag team match begins with multiple stories being told. With Dylan and Riki hating to tag one another, Dylan tags out at any time he can, in fear for the arrival of Scar. Eventually, with all men hitting their signature moves on one another, Dylan storms into the ring and hits everyone in sight with spear after spear. His fear seems to have turned to fury as he enjoys inflicting pain, intentionally spearing the referee. Dylan goes crazy, now yelling for Scar to come and smite him with his awesome power. With Rachelle trying to calm down her over-aggressive boyfriend, blackness occurs. The lights come back on, only for Dylan and Rachelle to be drenched in blood. The screen speaks to the couple yet again as it reads, "My beginning will be your end. This is your fate." With the couple motionless and in fear, all opponents remain down. After a moment, Ricky Matthews slowly enters the ring and approaches his partner, hoping to check if the couple are okay. About to lay a hand on his partner's bloody shoulder, Ricky gets shoved by the scared and now anxious Dylan. Retaliating, Ricky superkicks Dylan into Rachelle, sending the couple out of the ring. About to wipe the blood off of himself, Ricky turns around to be rolled up by Dave Falcon. With Dave and Warren winning their tag team match and celebrating in pain, Dylan and Rachelle leave, stressing about Scar's craving for their blood. As the freaked out couple walk up the ramp, the lights go out yet again. When they brighten, Scar is seen in the ring. Dylan and Rachelle witness Scar's return from the ramp as the monster hits every man around him, leading to the resurrection being hit on Warren Jackson. As Scar stares at his rival, he points up. Then, a body bag once again falls from the ceiling and lands in front of the couple, indicating Scar's plan for the next pay-per-view, Reign Supreme. Pranks a lot. Due to Scar's intimidation last week, a body bag match is promoted for the next pay-per-view, Reign Supreme. Dylan and Scar must compete in the disturbing contest, where the winner is the man who can incapacitate their opponent to the point where they are zipped up inside the body bag. Frightened for what is to come, Dylan is once again nervous in his locker room and is approached by Rachelle as she enters the room. Understanding the terrifying experiences that they have both gone through over the last few weeks, she tells her man that she has nothing to worry about, as he is Dylan Dark, the coast-to-coast champion. Dylan begins to be empowered by his girlfriend's speech. She reminds him that he's walked through the fiery depths of the dome and came out the other side. Facing Scar at Reign Supreme may be seen as an impossible challenge, but so too was the idea of taking the monster out in the first place. Now motivated by his lover's words, Dylan acts tough, saying that he's not scared of a greasy-haired freak like Scar, and will gladly take down the chaotic creature the next time he plans on one of his creepy attacks. Rachelle is proud to have the dominant Dylan Dark back and tells him to show what sort of threat he is by destroying the annoying Aussie known as Barry the Bogan later tonight. Leaving to get Dylan's moisturizer once again, she kisses him with delight, only for Dylan to drop his cockiness and rub his head in deep thought, once again in doubt. With the match about to take place, we see Dylan and Rachelle walking through the hallway. With Rachelle in high spirits, Dylan tries his best to act tough in front of his girlfriend. However, the lights go out in the backstage area, with Rachelle screaming and Dylan now in fear. Then, a silhouette of a muscular figure is seen, standing at a doorway. Looking in front of them, the couple are petrified, with Dylan begging Scar for mercy. The dark figure slowly raises their hand, with Rachelle screaming in fear. The shadow flips a light switch, brightening the scene to reveal Barry the Bogan. The Aussie laughs at his prank and mocks his opponent for being a little scaredy cat. Responding to the prank, Dylan retaliates with fists. Dylan and Rachelle attack Barry until it is stopped by officials who rush over to the scene. The couple halt their attack as Barry's partner, Wazzy D, comes to threaten them. The couple leave with Wazzy looking after his partner. The Barry vs Dylan contest is postponed throughout the night due to the backstage beatdown. Later, an interviewer is seen outside the medical room, reporting that Barry has suffered a large blow to the head from Dylan Dark's attack. The doctors are not specified just how severe the injury is, but they have advised Barry not to compete tonight. With time running short on the episode, Dylan Dark and Rachelle enter the arena accompanied by an official. Dylan informs everyone that, due to some unfortunate circumstances, Barry the Bogan will be unable to compete against him tonight, and, as a result, Barry must forfeit this match. Dylan uses this opportunity to talk directly to Scar, stating that what happened to Barry is only a taste of what he will do to him next week, and suggests that the chaotic creature follow Barry's lead and forfeit. Dylan states that he is not scared of Scar or even a body bag, as he has been through more pain and more punishment than the monster can even think of. Convincing himself, Dylan believes that there is nothing that anyone can do to threaten and intimidate him. Ordering the official to announce him the winner, the scene is interrupted by Wazzy D. Barry's tag team partner gets in Dylan's face and states that if Barry can't compete tonight, then as his partner, he's going to compete for him. Rachelle chuckles, asking why Wazzy thinks he can man up to the destruction and power of Dylan. Wazzy ignores Rachelle and instead asks Dylan if he's going to fight or let his slut of a girlfriend do the talking for him. Insulted, Rachelle attempts to slap Wazzy, only for her hand to be grabbed in mid-air. As Wazzy stares a hole through the mistress, he is quickly struck down by Dylan. With the advantage, Dylan orders the official that's already in the ring to ring the bell. Continuing his ambush into a victory, Riki gets back on the microphone after pinning Wazzy. He brags about his destruction and how in one night has taken out Barry and Wazzy, threatening to do the same thing to Scar at Reign Supreme by doing what he did before, putting him in a body bag. Dylan promises that when he puts Scar in the bag, he won't be chucking him in a river. He'll be burying him 6 feet underground to make sure he will never return. At the height of Dylan's confidence, a blackout occurs yet again. Scar appears on screen, telling Dylan that he cannot kill what is not God's creation. At Reign Supreme, Scar will destroy Dylan Dark. He will rid the world of Dylan Dark, and in the process, Rachelle. Scar explains that sacrifices must be made in order to summon his sister back from the grave, and he sees no better sacrifice than Dylan, and of course, Rachelle. Scar claims that the last time the world will see Dylan is inside a body bag. With Scar sniggering, the couple are seen in fear. Reign Supreme. A body bag is hanged at ringside with the announcer explaining the rules of the following contest. No countout and no disqualification. The only way to win is to trap your opponent inside the body bag. With the rules made clear, Scar returns with his epic entrance. Noticing the body bag to the side of him, a smirk appears on the monster's face, awaiting his opponent. The chaotic creature is left waiting for quite some time, as it seems as though Dylan has either bailed from the challenge or is using some sort of stalling tactic. Scar then paces with frustration, not wanting to wait any longer for his redemption. Screaming for his salvation, Scar is satisfied to hear the music of Dylan Dark. However, instead of Dylan, Rachelle appears on the stage, alone. She begins to walk down the ramp in fear, realizing the monster that stands before her. With Scar confused and focused on Rachelle, he fails to notice that Dylan is now standing right behind him, planning a cowardly attack. With Dylan's fist raised in mid-movement, the villain stops as Scar drastically turns around with intensity, noticing his presence. With Dylan now frozen, realizing his plan has failed, Scar counters and starts the match by punishing his opponent. Finally countering the monster, Dylan is desperate to end the battle, trying to bag his opponent with every chance available to him. However, Scar fights off the body bag multiple times in order to resume the destruction of his opponent. Countering once again, Dylan gets momentum and decides to bring out his trusty crowbar in desperate time of need. He uses it multiple times on the monster's body and lines up for a huge shot to the face, only for Scar to hold the incoming weapon mid-air. Furious with Dylan's dodgy antics, Scar snatches the crowbar away. He looks at it and breaks it over his knee. Scar then destroys his rival throughout the arena. Heading into the backstage area, the fight returns to the scene where it all began, the parking lot. Scar destroys Dylan, using his surroundings as an advantage, leading to Dylan's back being slammed on the trunk of a car. Breaking the side windows and hitting his signature moves on Dylan with the vehicle, Scar opens the boot of the car to grab a body bag inside of it. With Scar planning on performing the same heinous acts on his opponent, Dylan is in danger as he is wrapped up in the body bag. Scar zips up the bag most of the way, only for Rachelle to reappear, jumping on Scar's back to stop him. Trying his best to get rid of her, Scar eventually throws Rachelle over the top of his head, sending her to the concrete floor. As she crawls backwards away from the monster in pain and terror, Rachelle can go no further as a car is blocking her movement. Making a snap decision, Rachelle searches under the vehicle and pulls out yet another crowbar, hoping to use it on the monster. However, she drops it instantly due to Scar's hand clutching her throat. Lifting the mistress high in the air, Scar slams her into the windscreen of a car. As Rachelle grimaces in pain with shattered glass underneath her, Dylan remains in the bag, allowing Scar to conclude the match by zipping it up the entire way. With the match finally over, Scar's acts of violence are far from finished. Taking out the referee who demands a stoppage, Scar gets in the driver's seat of the car with chaos in mind. Planning on kidnapping his rival, much like he did to him, the monster stares at the steering wheel in fear, almost motionless. Gasping for air and seemingly having a panic attack, Scar exits the vehicle in trauma as he remembers the death of his sister, seemingly having a phobia of driving. Angered by his terror, Scar kicks and punches the car, trying to shake the images out of his head. In his frantic motions, he sees the dropped crowbar on the floor. Halting his fears, the monster sniggers at an evil and deadly idea. He slowly picks the weapon up and abruptly walks back to the car. Leaning through the window, Scar wedges the crowbar on the accelerator, allowing the vehicle to reach its capacity of acceleration. As disaster awaits, Scar releases the handbrake, causing the car to go full speed in reverse. As the vehicle increases in speed, it crashes into the wall of the parking lot, with Dylan still inside. An eerie silence is heard as footage of the wreckage is seen. Scar flees from the scene as Rachelle is eventually heard, yelling and pleading for help. Silence is heard yet again, only to hear the cries of Rachelle as members of staff try to aid Dylan out of the car. Satisfaction not guaranteed. With Dylan Dark destroyed at Reign Supreme, Rachelle enters the arena on the following episode of Impetus with sorrow and grief. Entering to announce her boyfriend's injuries, she explains how badly Dylan has been hurt. With her boyfriend suffering internal bleeding, a concussion and broken fingers, Dylan was lucky he wasn't paralyzed or even killed. Although he is lucky to eventually be able to walk again, he may as well be paralyzed, as the chaotic acts of Scar have caused Dylan to have fractured his pelvis. Feeling mocked by the audience, she orders them to stop, telling them that she is a high-maintenance woman who needs satisfaction on way more than a weekly basis. Irritated with the crowd, she fires back like a spoilt brat. She feels she is nothing like the pathetic losers in attendance tonight, as they are lucky to even get it once a year. With her wants needed to be filled, she can't wait for Dylan Dark to be healthy again. She blames and hates Scar for what has happened, and hopes to never hear from him ever again. Hysterical, Rachelle questions how Scar could have even enjoyed performing the massacre that he did last week, and calls him a miserable, psychotic, ugly son of a bitch, and wishes that he died along with his sister all those years ago. Mentioning the chaotic creature, it doesn't take too long for Rachelle to be interrupted by Scar, as he slithers his way to the ring 1 week after his ruthless actions. Intimidating a motionless Rachelle, Scar tells her to relax, as maybe it's not a man who can satisfy her, but perhaps a monster. After all, he needs a little satisfaction of his own. Outraged by the suggestion, Rachelle yells at the monster in fear and slaps him right in the face. With Scar shocked and humoured by the strike, he soon clutches the throat of Rachelle once again. About to perform another act of violence, Scar withdraws his grip and lets Rachelle escape the ring. As Rachelle bails from the ring in fear, Scar grabs the dropped microphone. He claims to have suffered for too long. After being alone for countless days and countless nights, he now needs some satisfaction of his own. With Rachelle disgusted, Scar states that she can run, but she can't hide. With one woman gone from his life, Scar believes that another one is here to please him. Convinced that Dylan Dark's girlfriend is obtainable, Scar joyfully chases after the exiting Rachelle. As her boyfriend remains injured and out of action for the following weeks, Rachelle is running from a monster who wants his own form of satisfaction. Desperate for protection and with nowhere else to turn, she runs back to her ex-boyfriend, the man whose heart she broke and the man who still desperately wants her back, Charlie Finch. With Finch blind and naive to his crush's damsel-in-distress situation, he tries to protect his former girlfriend. Elated to have a knight in shining armour, Rachelle surprises Finch by putting him in a match with Scar at the next pay-per-view, Pressure. She promises to take Scar out once and for all, using Finch to her advantage. With Charlie clearly not prepared to take on the monster, he pretends that he is. He also pretends to be Rachelle's hero, all in hopes of winning her back. Pressure. Finch hopes to show what kind of man he has become, attempting to take advantage of his second shot at love. However, he is destroyed by Scar, eventually hit with the running power slam and beaten with the resurrection. With Finch falling out of the ring in defeat, Rachelle tends to him, hoping that her saviour can continue his protection. Ignoring a celebration, Scar approaches Rachelle on the outside and grabs her arm against her will, grabbing a microphone in the process. Now that her protectors have been vanquished, there is no stopping him from getting his desire, his pleasure, his satisfaction. With the cameraman following the scene, Scar takes her right into the ring. Now, finally, after all this time, she is now his. Before Scar makes any actions, the cameraman that followed him strikes the monster down with the camera. The cameraman takes off his hat and fake beard to reveal the return of Dylan Dark. Hitting Scar with the condemnation, Dylan is back for vengeance. Taking out the monster, Dylan begins to leave, arm in arm with his mistress. However, Rachelle is stopped from leaving as her foot is grabbed by a pained and heartbroken Charlie Finch. The fallen Finch looks up at Rachelle in sadness. He gets on his knees, almost begging for her love. With sympathy, Rachelle picks Finch up, strikes his hand away, and blows a kiss of her own, hitting him with a spear. Dylan and Rachelle exit the ring, leaving a physically broken Scar and emotionally broken Finch inside of it. They make out on the ramp, with the commentators realizing that she really did exit with her man tonight. Riverbank Statement. A week after Dylan Dark's impactful return, Scar takes his frustration out on Chris Vortex, leading to a dominating victory over his annoying and vegan opponent. After his quick win, Scar stares angrily at the camera, sending a message to Dylan. However, Dylan decides to send a message of his own as he appears on the screen just like Scar does in a darkened location. Assuming that Scar has just vented his anger on an innocent opponent, Dylan claims that the impact Scar has made tonight is nothing compared to the impact that he made last week. Returning from his injury at Pressure, Dylan received his vengeance after what Scar has done to Rachelle over the last month. With Rachelle entering the scene and joining her boyfriend, the two kiss, with Dylan claiming his revenge to not be complete. He wants this to end. He wants his rivalry to end Scar's obsession with Rachelle, and to end his path of destruction. He wants to finish it the same way in which it started, at the river. With the camera focusing on the background behind them, we see that the couple are standing near a wet and muddy canal of water. As the scene looks familiar to Scar, Dylan states that this is the location where Susan's life was taken, the location where Scar's internal torment started, and where it will inevitably finish. He states that Scar will finally be reunited with his sister, as he will be thrown into the same river where she rots and molds. Dylan challenges Scar to what he calls a Riverbank Match, where the winner throws their opponent into the river to the point where they can't even save themselves from drowning. Dylan states that this is the only way Scar will get to his sister, and the only way he will stay away from Rachelle. Dylan looks at his partner and promises her that she will not be used for anybody's satisfaction but his own. The couple makes out in the darkness, with Scar chuckling in the ring, claiming that Dylan has gotten it all wrong. Scar never wanted sexual satisfaction from Rachelle, as he wants spiritual satisfaction. With the twosome confused, Scar explains that the only way for his sister to rise from her death is by a sacrifice, a ritual, by giving her a body, a vessel for her soul to return to. With this known, Scar has chosen Rachelle to be that very vessel, and would have achieved that goal last week if not for her mind games, if not for Charlie Finch and Dylan Dark getting in the way. He needs to be alongside his long-lost sister by any means necessary, and if he can't bring Susan to him, then he is more than prepared to take a more hands-on approach. Scar accepts the challenge, with Dylan sniggering with excitement. However, Scar throws a curveball, accepting on one condition. He explains that he will not only get his sister back by sacrificing a female body, but he needs to destroy a symbol of power as well. A symbol of strength and hierarchy, a symbol much like the Coast to Coast Championship. Scar tells Dylan that if he wants revenge and to defend his lady's honor, then he must put everything on the line. His girlfriend, his livelihood, and the Coast to Coast title. Dylan accepts the challenge, with Rachelle in fear, worried for what might happen. The Riverbank Match. The following episode promotes the Riverbank Match between Dylan Dark and Scar. Scattered throughout the episode, Dylan is seen at the location of the river. He's seen pacing nervously on the muddy terrain and holding his coast-to-coast title closely, preparing for the unique battle. With the match ready to take place, Dylan is seen just like earlier, searching around with anxiety, looking for his opponent. Eventually, he hears Scar's voice from a distance. As Dylan still searches in fear, the camera sees Scar on top of a high pier behind Dylan's shoulder. Getting his opponent's instant attention, Scar yells out, telling Dylan that he has made a grave mistake by creating this match. Jumping off the pier and approaching his rival, Scar can't decide if his opponent is brave or stupid. Circled by his rival, Dylan claims that he likes to believe he's both. As the two stare each other down, Dylan drops his title and attempts to club Scar with the suddenly appearing crowbar located in his back pocket. However, Scar dodges and strikes his enemy down, beginning the brawl. The opponents fight in the dirty swamps near the river, using the environment to their advantage. With Scar in control, he gets stopped by Rachelle, who jumps on him. After eliminating her by chucking her into a huge puddle, Dylan takes control from this distraction. Their fight reaches the top of a small, rocky hill, raised above the dirty ground by 15 feet. As Dylan gains momentum, he wants to spear Scar off of it. However, Scar dodges. With Dylan now teetering on the edge, he tries to retain his balance. He soon saves himself, only to turn around and get scooped up by Scar. The two go off the edge of the rocky hill, and floored by Scar's power slam. After laying with pain, the two eventually stand and continue the brawl with fatigue, leading its way back to the riverbank, where they started. With the previously seen pier close in the background, Dylan is in trouble and gets his throat clutched, only for Rachelle to interfere yet again. She rakes the eyes of the monster, halting his attack. With Scar temporarily blinded, Dylan orders Rachelle to hit him with it, and chucks her a shiny silvery object in which we can barely see. With Rachelle gone for a while, Dylan keeps his offense going until Scar reverses and gains momentum. With Scar clutching the throat of Dylan yet again, the monster is on his way to victory, only to be blinded again by bright lights from the distance. Distracted, Scar has little time to react to a car coming his way, and he gets hit by the vehicle. With Scar in huge pain and laying on the ground, Rachelle gets out of the car with panic, helping the demanding Dylan drag the lifeless body of Scar up to the pier. Hoping to send Scar off the end of the pier, Dylan raises his crowbar high in the air for one last shot. However, Scar blocks and grabs it with intensity. The monster stands, he boots Rachelle in the face, and he snatches the crowbar away from his rival. With Dylan now worried, Scar smiles. Instead of using the weapon, the monster chuckles and throws the crowbar into the river. With no hope left, Dylan is destroyed on the pier, eventually hit with the resurrection, off the pier and into the river. Winning the unique battle, Scar picks the Coast to Coast title up from the ground and exits as the new champion, leaving his drowning opponent without a care. Flailing in the background, Dylan begs to be saved as he suffers in the river. With the monster vacating himself from the scene, Rachelle screams for help. In pain, she tries to save her man by walking into the river, but can't advance any further. Desperate for support, Rachelle shouts for a hero to save the day until she hears another car arrive at the scene. It's Charlie Finch. Without hesitation, Finch dives into the river to save his foe. He pulls the unconscious Dylan out of the river in near silence. Rachelle is shocked as her former boyfriend barely acknowledges her. Finch drops the barely breathing body in front of his ex-girlfriend and leaves after taking a moment to look into her eyes. Rachelle looks after Dylan, shocked of what she and everybody has just witnessed. So, what now? After destroying another innocent opponent, this time as the new Coast to Coast champion, Scar stares at his title with excitement as the arena fills with orange and red lighting. He talks, claiming that his damnation will finally turn to salvation as he, by sacrificing the power of the Coast to Coast title and sacrificing the vessel known as Rachelle, will bring back the soul of his sister once and for all. Once in possession of both the symbol of power and the vessel of life, he will destroy the body and the gold to call Susan's spirit back from the dead. Scar states that there is no stopping his destruction and prepares the world for further chaos. He leaves with the commentators wondering who can stop the monster. As the previous scene ends, a close-up of Rachelle's petrified face is seen inside Sam Pullen's office. Zooming out, we see a pale and sick Dylan Dark next to her, as the couple are anxiously waiting for the president to end his phone call. The boss finally has time for the couple and asks what they want. Dylan reacts quickly, demanding that he receives his coast-to-coast title back, as it was defended in the most chaotic of situations. Plus, he kind of doesn't want Rachelle to be sacrificed. With Dylan coughing due to his illness, Sam declines any chance of that happening, especially with Dylan still clearly being sick after last week. Dylan is persistent and tells the boss that he's fine and asks again for some sort of justice. Sam raises his voice at Dylan, saying that it took a lot of persuasion from Rachelle to not vacate the coast-to-coast title in his absence. A lot of persuasion. Quite frankly, Sam says that he's getting tired of being persuaded by the same person, and claims that if Dylan wants the coast-to-coast title back, he's just going to have to beat Scar to reclaim it. After being thrown into a body bag, then a car, and then a damn river, Dylan refuses to face Scar again, as he has no idea what he'll be getting thrown into next. Sam then yells with irritation, as not only did Dylan bring this all upon himself, but has caused Impetus enough problems since episode 1, and orders that this chaos stop right now. Silenced by his boss, Dylan tries to kiss up to Sam. He only caused chaos on Impetus in hopes for the show to be more like Adrenaline. Applauding Dylan for his ass-kissing abilities, Sam decides to help him out. Refusing to have any trouble with the freak, Sam will not take the title off of Scar. However, he can make Scar defend his title next week. That way, with a new champion crowned, Scar's ritual cannot take place. Dylan's excitement increases as Sam announces that the title will be defended next week in a 10-man battle royal. Dylan is ecstatic, with Rachelle having other thoughts. Refusing a handshake, Sam tells Dylan to leave before he gets him sick. As Sam returns to his phone call, Dylan exits with happiness, leaving Rachelle to slowly follow in deep thought. Later, a sick Dylan is talking to a concerned Rachelle in their locker room. They jump as they witness a serious Charlie Finch approach them, demanding a thank you. Scoffing, Dylan is about to decline, only for Finch to demand appreciation from Rachelle. Waiting in awkwardness, Rachelle asks Dylan for some privacy. The villain scowls at Finch as he exits, coughing in his face, hoping to get him sick. Asked why he saved Dylan last week, Finch claims that he was showing Rachelle how much he still wants her, claiming that he will do anything to make her realize how much she means to him, even going to the extent of saving her own boyfriend. Rachelle rolls her eyes and thanks Finch for what he did last week, but tells him that there is nothing he can do or say to make him desirable in any way. Rejecting him once again, Rachelle assumes that her recent actions would have told him that. She is Dylan's girl, and that will never change. Ever persistent, Finch reminds her that Dylan is bad news as he has put her in danger way too many times. Looking to the floor, Rachelle guesses that a lot of people do a lot of stupid things for love, as he is well aware. Rachelle tells Finch that he must stop caring for her, as any feelings that she had for him in the past no longer exist. Realizing he can do no more, Finch stares at his one true love with tears in his eyes and a quivering of his lips. He leaves with sadness as Rachelle looks on. A royal battle. The 10-man battle royal takes place the following week, pitting Scar against 9 other men, all with the monster's coast-to-coast title on the line. With Dylan hoping for a new champion in order to rid the chances of Scar's promised ritual, not only is the gold on the line, but so too is Rachelle's life. Battling through 8 royal opponents, Scar eliminates Chris Vortex, successfully retaining his title despite the interference of Dylan Dark. Heated after his failure to rid Scar of the title, Dylan is seen pacing with madness in his locker room. With Rachelle trying to calm him down, Dylan asks what they're going to do. Rachelle claims that the freak isn't worth worrying about and naively suggests that the monster is just toying with him. Furious with being told to relax, Dylan reminds her that he needs his title back, otherwise she's going to be sacrificed. Rachelle yells back, saying that she can't deal with this pressure anymore. She can't deal with the constant fear and repeatedly seeing Dylan in danger. Dylan gets quiet and serious. He approaches Rachelle's face and tells her that he will stop at nothing to get his title back and asks her, once again, what they are going to do. Rachelle looks into Dylan's eyes and says that she doesn't know now, but what she does know is that she is close to giving up. She leaves the room with Dylan in shock. He yells with panic, saying that she can't just give up on him. Desperate for the Coast to Coast title to change hands, Dylan enters the arena later in the night with a referee, demanding Scar to defend his title once again against Chris Vortex. Chris Vortex enters with confusion, scared for another experience with Scar. Dylan then forces the official and announcer to declare that if the champion does not appear right now, then the title will be vacated. Dylan orders the official to ring the bell and count to 10. Threatened by a stressed and obsessed Dylan, the official counts to 7, only for the lights to go out. Scar appears in the ring and goes to hit Dylan, only for the villain to escape. With the monster staring down his rival, Vortex tries to capitalize but gets destroyed by the monster, who continues the impromptu match. With the Coast to Coast title on the line for the second time in the night, Scar bests Vortex yet again, even with Dylan Dark's and Rachelle's involvement. After his second win of the night, Scar raises the title, grinning at the scared and damaged couple. However, he then drops the title on the ground, looking at a confused Dylan. The monster states that after the failed actions of his enemy, it is obvious to him that Dylan will stop at nothing to get his title back. Rather than be pestered by Dylan week after week, Scar sees no other choice than to rid himself of the title and hand it over to Dylan. With Rachelle in fear on the outside, Dylan is peeking over the barricade, suspicious and contemplating the chance to regain his gold. The monster tells his rival to come and claim his prize. Dylan slowly approaches the ring, with Rachelle completely against it. A confused and cautious Dylan slowly enters the ring. He gets closer to the gold, with Scar lightly kicking the title toward him, easy for him to take. The villain is hesitant and slowly drops to a knee to grab it, only for Scar to stomp on his hand attached to the gold. Scar laughs menacingly, with Dylan in fear, and asks him if he thought it was really going to be that easy. They may have had their battles, but in order to get his title back, he must survive a war. The cars, the body bags, and the riverbanks pale in comparison to the final challenge that lays ahead. If Dylan truly wants the title, if he desperately craves it that badly, he will go to war with Scar at Relentless, inside the dome. Dylan is shocked, with Scar awaiting an answer. The monster tells Dylan that he needs to sacrifice everything and needs to put anything on the line to achieve championship status yet again. Scar asks for an answer. With Dylan about to talk, Rachelle yells on the outside, trying to stop him. Noticing the disapproval of his girlfriend, Dylan goes to leave, but, instead, turns around to ask Scar a question. He asks if the monster really thinks he would risk any more of his health, any more of his career, any more of his relationship, and damn life by competing inside the dome. All of that just for the Coast to Coast title? Dylan looks at Rachelle and looks back at the title. After contemplating, Dylan gets in Scar's face and agrees to the match. With Rachelle in fear, she orders Dylan to get the hell out of the ring. Dylan leaves with his rival grinning and his girlfriend in anger. The commentators are shocked and ask if the dome makes its return at Relentless. The pre-ritual. Scar is seen in the ring the following week, surrounded by familiar orange and red lighting. Added to the scene are flaming torches being placed on the turnbuckles and a pentagram symbol in the middle of the ring. Scar explains that his sadness will end as, with this setting, he will host the rebirth of his sister, Susan. This is the scene where the ritual will take place. After Relentless, combined with sacrificing the powers of the Coast to Coast title, Rachelle will be satisfying his urges as her body will become a vessel for Susan to return to. The dome will be bloody, it will be brutal, it will be crass, but it will be the most beautiful night of his life, as, after a decade of pain and agony, he will finally be reunited with his sibling. Scar sends a message to Dylan, claiming that every bit of suffering that he's endured over the last few months will all reform in one match. Due to their fear, Dylan and Rachelle refuse to make an appearance at the arena. Instead, they later respond to Scar's speech in the comfort of their own home. Sitting on the couch with caution, the commentators thank the couple for their time this evening and begin the interview segment. At Relentless, the tragic story of Dylan Dark vs. Scar will come to an end inside the dome. Rather than ask how Dylan feels about what has happened, Dylan is asked about what will happen come the dome. Dylan is intense and claims that after dealing with the dome before, he grew stronger from it, using that strength to become the Coast to Coast champion. The title, just like for Scar, is a symbol of power for Dylan and is the reason why it means so much to him. As for the cage, Scar is not his only opponent at Relentless, as Dylan will be facing the dome itself and this time will win. The commentators ask for Rachelle's feelings in all of this. She notes her fear throughout this entire ordeal, hoping she could wake up from this terrible nightmare. She knew Scar was psychotic, but didn't realize it would go this far. Calmly, she states that she is just so sick of being in fear for her life, Dylan's life, their life. She's just worried. With Dylan noticeably irritated, the commentators ask him for his final thoughts heading into the structure. He looks into the camera and says that all he wants is to be champion again, and claims that he doesn't care what is at stake. He looks at the camera, but talks more toward Rachelle, claiming that he doesn't care where it all takes place, who is worried, or whose life is on the line. He will stop at nothing to get his title back. With Dylan focused, he ignores his tear-filled girlfriend. As Rachelle tries to hold back her tears, the commentators thank them for their time and end the segment. Returning from a commercial break, the commentators show the scenes that occurred after the previous interview. As they went off air, Dylan immediately leaves his seat and walks away, clearly irritated with the emotional Rachelle, who tries to refrain from crying. Placing her hands over her face in stress and sadness, the commentators are worried for the chaos the dome will bring. Sacrificing everything. Deep into the next episode, Rachelle is seen in her locker room with sadness. Entering with irritation, a flustered Dylan finally finds her, asking where the hell she's been throughout the night. He frantically asks why she hasn't been talking to him lately, as he needs her to prepare for the dome and his match tonight. He grabs and pulls her by the arm, hoping to strategize, only to be shocked as she pushes his arm away. Rachelle reminds Dylan of 2 weeks ago, where she claimed that she was close to giving up. If Dylan really wants to pursue the Coast to Coast title anymore, then she doesn't want any part of it. Dylan tries to breeze it off, saying that she's just being silly. Rachelle yells at her ignorant partner, claiming to be sick of helping him, sick of putting herself in danger for him, and wants no part of the war. Dylan's shock turns to anger as he asks Rachelle if she's just going to leave him, chuck him away when things get too hard. After all they've gone through, after all the pain and fear that they've suffered, she's going to quit now? Dylan asks what happens now that she leaves, as the match is still official. Regardless of their relationship, the Dome match is happening. And now she's just going to up and leave? Stubborn with her decision, Rachelle folds her arms and looks away. Dylan scoffs and claims that he thought the two of them were a team. As it turns out, he was wrong. Dylan leaves with fury as Rachelle tries her best to stay strong. Entering the arena alone later in the evening, Dylan tries not to show his concern with his relationship as he prepares for a match against Jimmy Sparrow. Able to stand toe-to-toe with the emotional Dylan Dark, Jimmy gets motivated by the crowd a little too much, to the point where he distracts himself, losing to a spear by Dylan. Silencing the rookie, Dylan stares down at his fallen opponent and picks him up slowly, ready to deliver a physical message to Scar. About to make an impact, Dylan gets countered by Jimmy, who fights back, throwing fists and kicks to the villain. With Dylan defending himself in the corner, he pushes Jimmy away from him, causing separation. Refusing to stop, Jimmy approaches his opponent for more damage, only to get speared by Rachelle. Shocked with her appearance, Dylan accepts a hug and a kiss from his partner. Still looking to send a message, Dylan is handed the crowbar by his girlfriend and proceeds to attack Jimmy with it, cutting his face open with the sharpness of the weapon. Disposing the rookie to the outside, Dylan grabs the microphone and sends a verbal message to Scar. This is the Dylan Dark that Scar must deal with come the Dome. This is the brutal, barbaric, ruthless, and destructive Dylan Dark that will defeat Scar at Relentless. With nowhere to run or hide, Dylan can't wait to get back inside the Dome and take back his coast-to-coast title. With Dylan on another level of intensity, he reminds everybody of what Scar said last week, stating that he has to sacrifice everything for the title. With that said, Dylan spears Rachelle. Staring at his lifeless girlfriend, he then brushes her hair. He picks her up and hits her with the condemnation. Dylan asks what he's sacrificing when he has nothing left to sacrifice. He promises, just like Scar, that there will be blood, there will be carnage, and there will be a new coast-to-coast champion. He exits the ring, stepping over the motionless ex-girlfriend. Relentless. The Dome hosts an intense battle, leading to blood pouring from both opponents' faces. Dylan attempts multiple times to get his crowbar from under the ring, but is constantly denied from the power of Scar. Despite being denied the weapon, Dylan's determination allows him to keep kicking out of Scar's offense. The monster gets furious with this, chucking Dylan into the steel of the Dome and eventually sets up a table on the outside of the ring. With Dylan able to avoid the wood, the fight continues, leading to Dylan hitting 2 spears on Scar, slowing him down for the moment. Dylan grabs a steel chair and sets it up, trying to hit the condemnation on the steel on the monster. However, Scar reverses and hits Dylan with a power slam on the chair. Staring at his pained opponent with rage, Scar's emotions change as he now has an idea. He goes to the outside and grabs Dylan's crowbar that he so desperately wanted earlier. Scar sets himself up on the top turnbuckle, looking to drive the crowbar into the face of Dylan, ending the match for good. However, while setting up, Rachelle is seen running down the ramp with bolt cutters equipped, trying to unlock the door of the cage. Witnessing the failure to enter the match, Scar chuckles and approaches Rachelle with the door in between them. He toys with her, sending her to the floor as she is startled by his sudden movement of intimidation. Happy with the torture that he's creating, Scar climbs back up the turnbuckle, ready to strike. However, on his way up, Rachelle breaks the chain of the door and finally rushes into the dome, pushing Scar off the ropes and sending him through the table that was previously set up on the outside. Rachelle then gets in the ring and reunites with Dylan, apologizing to him and regretting their breakup. Barely alive, Dylan wants help in taking out Scar and orders her, in fatigue, to set up another table in the ring. She does as ordered, fully happy to aid her boyfriend in succeeding. With the tables being set up in the ring, Dylan and Rachelle struggle to grab the fatigued body of Scar and place him in the ring and onto the wood. With the monster motionless on the table, Dylan then heads up to the top rope while Rachelle holds down the arms of Scar. Just like his opponent, Dylan taunts a dive from the top and claims that the rivalry is over. Dylan dives, launching himself through the air, only for Rachelle to pull Scar off the table, sending Dylan right through the wood. Rachelle stares at her pained boyfriend, hating him for all she has gone through. Happy to have turned on her partner, Rachelle attempts to make a statement by leaving the dome. However, she walks into the brick wall known as Scar. Recovered, Scar clutches her throat, ready for the resurrection, only for Charlie Finch to appear. Finch attacks Scar and knocks him down with vicious chair shots. Charlie yells with anger and then silences himself as he looks at his ex-girlfriend. Rachelle finally realizes that Finch is her hero. The two cry and hug with passion. Happy to be in each other's arms once again, they go to leave the ring, only for Finch to put her in position for the full effect finisher move. Finch hits the move on his one true love, showing that he is truly done chasing after her. Finch leaves with Rachelle, Dylan and Scar all knocked out inside the steel. Getting back to his feet, Dylan notices the motionless body of Rachelle. He shrugs, barely caring for what he sees. He turns around to continue the match, only to be choked by the hand of Scar and hit with the resurrection to end it all. After the shocking turn of events, Scar clutches his title close to him, while Dylan and Rachelle lay unconscious. After raising his title, Scar looks down at the lifeless Rachelle. He picks her up and leaves with her in his arms, ready for his ritual. A Vow for Vengeance. 7 days after the torturous and eventful dome match, many careers have been changed. With Scar remaining the champion, he prepares himself for the ritual. But what of Dylan Dark? Seen in his locker room with cuts and bruises all over him, he is cautiously approached by a caring interviewer who reminds him what he lost last week. Worried for Dylan's reaction, they explain that not only did he lose his second experience in the dome, not only did he lose his chance to regain the coast-to-coast title, but he seems to have lost Rachelle in the process. With Scar's apparent ritual set to take place later tonight, the interviewer asks what Dylan is thinking. Calm, yet clearly irritated, Dylan speaks quietly, saying that he was told he had to sacrifice everything to get back his coast-to-coast title, and he did. He sacrificed his health, his career and his life, but wants it to be well known that he did not sacrifice Rachelle, as she wasn't worth a damn thing to him. All she was to him was a trophy, a side piece, a stick to poke the bear with, bait to lure Scar in. And it worked. It worked, he just didn't get the job done. He blames Rachelle for not having the title right now and says that if Rachelle meant anything to him, it proved 2 weeks ago and last week inside the dome that she is now dead to him. As for the ritual taking place later tonight, it seems as though she is dead to everybody else. He may be sitting here as a man that is broken, defeated and without a title, beaten by the dome not once but twice, but he is also the man with vengeance on his mind. He has no idea when and no idea how, but he will make sure that Scar gets what is coming to him. Despite promising his revenge, Dylan has made it clear that he couldn't care less for his one true love. As a result, we witness Rachelle's body being sacrificed in the ritual, vanquishing her soul and being replaced by the returning spirit of Susan. Finally, after over a decade, the sister finally reunites with her brother, excited for the chaos that is about to unfold. Rebuilding Dylan Dark. Weeks without a Dylan Dark appearance, promo packages are placed throughout the following episodes, labelled Rebuilding Dylan Dark. After the events of Relentless, Dylan Dark has lost everything. With 2 failures inside the dome, a collapse of a relationship, and his loss of the Coast to Coast title, Dylan Dark has nothing to show his true talents. The commentators ask how Dylan will come back after the previous and tragic months. The answer is revealed after a month of promotion as he returns to face the man that he recently mutilated, Jimmy Sparrow. Despite Jimmy's previous and horrific encounter with Dylan Dark, the rookie never seemed to give up, as he actually went on to impress the crowd with his never say die attitude and constant will to win. This attitude led Sparrow to becoming the new #1 contender for the world title, shocking everyone in the process. Furious with his adrenaline plans being messed with, Sam Pullen hates to see the rookie be placed in his Raise Hell main event. Inconvenienced, Sam punishes Jimmy 1 week before his world title match, as he must now battle the returning and rebuilt Dylan Dark. With Jimmy entering the arena for the contest, he realizes that he will be facing a more enraged and psychotic Dylan than ever before. A slow and emotional Dylan Dark enters the ring for the first time since his Dome defeat. He destroys the #1 contender with aggression, unleashing his inner turmoil. Despite Jimmy's fight to survive, Dylan continues to clobber his rookie opponent, threatening to finish the match. Ready to hit the condemnation, Dylan is reversed into a sudden pin, losing his returning contest. Jimmy exits instantly as Dylan kicks out and looks on with absolute shock. With Jimmy getting his hand and momentum raised as he approaches Raise Hell, Dylan remains in motionless shock, wondering how the hell this all happened. At an all-time low, Dylan has lost more than a fight against a steel, more than his bait in female form, and more than the title of all the coasts. Dylan Dark has lost his pride and therefore his position on the Raise Hell card. While a rookie of the business enters the biggest match of his life, Dylan refuses to sit back and let his desired success be given to someone else. Raise Hell. With the champion known as Corruption ripping the rookie apart in the main event, Jimmy is able to use his fighting spirit to counter the oncoming giant. As Corruption crashes down to the mat, Jimmy has one more shot to cover his titanic opponent. Desperate to emerge as the underdog champion, Jimmy covers the knocked out Corruption until Sam Pullen gets on the apron, shouting and flapping his arms like a madman, refusing to witness the title change. As the official is distracted by the president, Jimmy walks over to the boss and shoves him off the apron. Sam goes ballistic, trying to get in the ring with the official holding him back. While Sam debates with the official on the outside, he soon gets ejected from the arena. With the president being ejected, this allows the entry of Dylan Dark, who jumps in the ring and delivers a devastating and shocking spear to Jimmy Sparrow. While Jimmy lays in pain, Dylan exits instantly throughout the crowd, while the official continues to deal with Sam up the ramp, making sure he leaves. Witnessing the dark interference, Sam puts his arms up now in mercy, suddenly happy to leave as the title seems to be safe. However, as the official continues to detain the president, Greg Williams jumps in the ring for a similar assault of his own, hitting Corruption with the scrutiny finisher move, making an even playing field. With Sam reacting angrily to the rebels' actions, Greg exits, leaving the official unaware of any interferences. Noticing Jimmy crawl for the cover, Sam hates to see the official run back to the ring and count the 3. A new champion is crowned. Rebuilding Dylan Dark again. The following episode of Impetus opens with the new world champion, Jimmy Sparrow. After celebrating his title win, he is confronted by the outraged president, who tells him that he is not, nor will he ever be, the world champion. In fact, the only man recognized as such is the giant who stands next to him, Corruption. Refusing to accept last week's shenanigans, Sam forces Jimmy to relinquish and return the title back to Corruption, or risk being fired. Having his party pooped, Jimmy returns the gold to its rightful owner, and is told by the president that he may want to stop his unrealistic goal of becoming champion, as he has a man breathing down his neck. A man who Jimmy embarrassed 2 weeks ago, a man whose recent return was ruined, and a man who wants his revenge. Tonight, Jimmy Sparrow must deal with Dylan Dark. Not only is this match tonight, but it is right now. Satisfied with the recovery of the world title, Sam and Corruption exit, letting Jimmy understand that this is what happens when you rebel against adrenaline. With the embarrassing loss still fresh in his mind, Dylan Dark enters to destroy Jimmy once again. Much like 2 weeks ago, Dylan vents his frustration, only with more intensity and vengeance than before. Jimmy fights back, just like their previous encounter, and even tries to win with a reminiscent roll-up. However, Dylan kicks out in time and performs an even more relentless attack, leading to a spear for the win. Regaining his power and ridding himself of humiliation, Dylan stands over Jimmy, only to see the rookie moving underneath him. Irritated to see his opponent recover, Dylan hits a second spear, forcing the rookie to stay down. Standing over his fallen opponent once more, Dylan is about to exit, only to see Jimmy stir once again. Enraged by yet another act of defiance, Dylan refuses to accept Jimmy's passion as he grabs a chair from the outside and hits the condemnation on the steel, injuring the rookie. With Jimmy finally motionless, Dylan exits with anger as doctors come out to check on the fallen opponent. Vengeance verified. With the rookie career of Jimmy Sparrow seemingly destroyed, another rookie career of Mark Emil seems to be arising. A lifelong fan of the adrenaline days of wrestling, Mark Emil is excited for his dreams to come true, as he is promoted for his debut match. Mark's father, Steve, is elated for his son to start as a fan and turn into a star. Unfortunately for Mark Emil, his debut match happens to be against the brutal and vengeful Dylan Dark. Before embarking on a new rookie-killing conquest, Dylan must first complete his previous mission, delivering on a promise. Dominating the tag team division, Scar and Susan's siblinghood causes damnation for their opponents. Week after week, the brother-sister pairing has led to some vicious victories, and, on a night where Mark Emil is soon to debut, Scar and Susan are robbed of their celebration by the familiar face of Dylan Dark. Dylan stands on stage and talks to the confused siblings. He reminds Scar that he would get his revenge after their war in the Dome, and now the time has finally come. With the monster puzzled, Dylan reintroduces Scar to his sister's former lover, Dominic Silver. With Scar beginning a new feud with Susan's old boyfriend, Dylan is satisfied to ruin Scar's life. Ruining one life, Dylan prepares to do the same to Mark Emil. Ruining the siblings' connection, Dylan later ruins the debut of Mark Emil, who, after sharing a happy hug with his father at ringside before the match, gets destroyed in a matter of seconds thanks to the spear of Dylan Dark. With a new, savage attitude, Dylan stares at Mark's father as he exits. However, noticing Mark recovering, Dylan sniggers and heads back into the ring to deliver the drive-by on the rookie. Staring at the tormented father, Dylan heads to the outside to get a closer look at the concerned parent. Deciding to grab a chair for the second week in a row, Dylan gets back in the ring, opens the weapon, and hits the condemnation to Mark on the steel. Leaving Mark KO'd in the ring, Dylan leaves, glaring at the concerned father. Rookie Killer. Dylan's vicious pursuit of power seems to increase his appetite for the lives of others. Not only has he helped torment the siblings of Susan and Scar, but has injured the upstart careers of Jimmy Sparrow and Mark Emil. With Jarvis Banks' popularity building by his silly persona and cocky attitude, he finds himself not only on the positive side of the audience, but on the receiving end of yet another Dylan Dark beatdown. Defeating Chris Vortex in a quick contest, Jarvis has no time to celebrate as he gets speared by the suddenly appearing villain. As Banks recovers in pain, Dylan stands over the rookie, asking if this is how far Impetus has come. 3 months ago, he was competing for the Coast to Coast title inside the hellish structure known as the Dome, against the man-eater known as Scar. 3 months later, he has a loss from a naive Jimmy Sparrow and replaced by barely legal fanboys and kids with stupid catchphrases. Making his way to the outside, Dylan grabs his classic crowbar and explains that he is sick of these wannabes trying to step over him, acting like they deserve something. Sickened by the youth of the business and their fairy tale dreams, Dylan is more than happy to provide them with a reality check. He may have reintroduced Scar to his childhood enemy last week, but tonight he reintroduces himself to the world. Dylan Dark, Rookie Killer. Throwing the microphone down, Dylan smacks Jarvis in the head with the crowbar, knocking him out. He then drags the lifeless body to the outside of the ring. He rips the mats off and exposes the concrete. The savage attacks reach a new height of chaos as Dylan threatens to hit the condemnation on the floor, only for referees and doctors to come out and stop him. Forced from creating any further injuries, Dylan is told to exit with Jarvis getting medical help. Dylan's recent destruction is shown on the next episode, as we are reminded of the injured stars named Jimmy Sparrow, Mark Emil, and Jarvis Banks. While the highlights of their damnation play on the screen, Dylan's voice is heard, claiming that last week the world was introduced to his new identity, the Rookie Killer, Dylan Dark. The man who refuses to allow naive, pathetic little children to walk freely in the land of giants. This is pro wrestling, not a Make-A-Wish foundation. Jimmy's dreams of becoming world champion have turned to nightmares. Mark's vision of impressing his father became a blinding reality. And last week, with a blow to the head, Jarvis became more than stupid. With Dylan entering after the flashbacks, he walks to the ring, proud of his cruelty, almost grinning at his recent chaos. Prepared for war, he anticipates the arrival of Kipton Warwick, who comes out in his street clothes. Confused by his opponent's attire, Dylan listens to Kipton speak on the microphone. As much as he'd love to be a part of Dylan's midlife crisis, Kipton announces that his match tonight has been changed. Having to pull out of the match due to his recent toothache, Dylan will still be competing against Jarvis Banks. With a bandaged head, Jarvis enters the arena with rage as he stares at his attacker from last week. Careless for his health, the rookie charges to the ring and tackles his opponent, starting the impromptu match. After unleashing his rage, Banks spends too much time motivating the crowd and himself, causing an opening for Dylan to return the offense. He delivers a spear and a drive-by to win the match in sudden fashion. Without hesitation, Dylan performs his familiar acts as he rolls instantly to the outside and grabs his crowbar. Smacking Jarvis in the face yet again with the weapon, he kicks the rookie to the outside, rips the mats apart, and attempts to hit the condemnation once again on the exposed floor. Last week, doctors and officials halted the scene. This week, Captain Warwick re-enters in hopes to save the rookie. However, Dylan counters immediately and sends Kipton into the turnbuckle. Returning to his recovering victim, Dylan resumes his attack on Jarvis, looking to end it all with the condemnation to the concrete, only for the scene to stop once again by the music of Jimmy Sparrow. Bursting down the ramp, Jimmy returns and fights with Dylan back in the ring. Shrieking with anger and momentum, Jimmy is silenced as he sees the previously used crowbar on the mat. Hoping to return the favour to his attacker, Jimmy prepares to use the weapon only for Dylan to notice and quickly bail from the ring. Furious with the villain, Jimmy demands Dylan to return to the ring and finish what he started, so much so that he even places the crowbar at the side of the ring, allowing his attacker to pick it up and use it. Panicking with embarrassment, Dylan tries to grab the weapon but backs away in fear of Jimmy Sparrow. Due to the impressive return and demands of Jimmy, he and Dylan Dark are set for battle next week at the pay-per-view Insurgency. And, in order to make sure our hero gets his vengeance, Dylan adds to his list of stipulation matches as he competes in a no disqualification match with an outraged rookie. Insurgency. The rookie killer enters with a slow and methodical pace, realizing that his opponent is out for blood. After making multiple lives a living hell, Dylan witnesses the return of the rookie, vowing for revenge. Jimmy comes dressed for a fight, wearing a tank top, wrist tape, and jeans. The rookie enters with seriousness as his eyes are locked on Dylan's for the entirety of the entrance. As the two stare each other down, Jimmy is ready to unleash his rage while Dylan is cautious of what his opponent might do. Slowly, the rookie walks closer to his opponent, backing him up in the corner. With Dylan remaining calm, Jimmy tries to fake him out with a quick movement, only for Dylan to remain still, staring Jimmy down. Failing to intimidate his attacker, Jimmy backs away, only to reach down his pants and pull out a crowbar of his own. Dylan's previously calm emotions finally change as the villain is now worried for what is to come. Jimmy approaches his rival once again and, this time, makes Dylan flinch by raising the weapon in the air, pretending to use it. With Dylan bothered by the humiliation, Jimmy chuckles at the fear. Despite having the advantage with a weapon in hand, Jimmy then decides to walk to the side of the ring and drop the crowbar to the outside. Eliminating the weapon, Jimmy secures his wrist tape, ready for a fist fight, making it obvious that this is personal. As Dylan hopes to regain some dignity, the two brawl for a while. Later, with Jimmy in control, he attempts to hit a suicide dive on the outside. Flying through the air, Jimmy's offense is obstructed thanks to a shot to the head with the previously dropped crowbar. With Jimmy out cold, Dylan begins to drag the lifeless body into the ring, but stops, dropping the rookie with an idea in mind. Dylan licks his lips and pulls the mats out from underneath him. As the exposed cement looks all too familiar, Dylan prepares to hit the condemnation on his opponent, only for Jarvis Banks to come to the rescue. With Jarvis in momentum, it soon gets squashed as Dylan throws him into the barricade and hits a drive-by on him through it. After eliminating Jarvis from the equation, Dylan begins to walk over to his opponent, only Jimmy is missing. Out of nowhere, Jimmy flies out of the ring, hitting Dylan with the previously attempted suicide dive. With Jimmy in huge pain, it takes him a while to throw Dylan back in the ring. After doing so, he stumbles, acknowledging Jarvis for his sacrifice. He gets in the ring only to be speared in half by Dylan. The villain picks Jimmy up, spears him again, and covers for the win. With his hand being raised and his opponent in pain, Dylan attempts to walk up the ramp, but simply cannot help himself. He sees the recovering Jarvis stumble at ringside and grins at his evil intentions. Wanting to finish what he started, Dylan pulls the struggling Jarvis over to the previously exposed cement. As he prepares once again for the condemnation, Jimmy yells in the ring, crawling with little movement due to his pain. Hurt and aching, Jimmy tries his best to yell at Dylan, pleading for him to stop. Realizing that no one can stop him, Dylan sniggers and decides to hit the condemnation on Jarvis onto the exposed floor. As Jarvis lays, knocked out with blood pouring from under his head, Dylan slowly exits with delight, witnessing Jimmy in physical and emotional pain in the ring. Fiction or prediction? Following the pay-per-view, Jimmy Sparrow seeks justice for the unsolicited assault of Jarvis Banks, hoping to send a message to the vile Dylan Dark. Speaking of vile, Jimmy has the opportunity to vent his frustration as he faces Chris Vortex in the following episode. After defeating his opponent, Jimmy grabs the microphone and talks about Insurgency and how his health and career was spared by Jarvis Banks. Jimmy vents his appreciation as Jarvis took the bullet for him last week, as Dylan planted him in the concrete not once, but twice. Refusing to forget Jarvis's heroic acts, Jimmy also refuses to forget the cowardly acts of Dylan Dark. He calls him out right here, right now, to finish what they started last week. Jimmy awaits the music of Dylan, only for the rival to be seen on the screen. Dylan reminds Jimmy that he is young, naive, and has little understanding of the world that he lives in. He explains that kids like Jimmy are so unaware of their actual purpose and claims that they are designed to be walked on, stepped over for the entirety of their careers. Guys like Jimmy and Jarvis are too inexperienced for this job, not just in the ring, but in life. Dylan claims that if he is to accept another fight with Jimmy, he knows everything that's going to happen from beginning to end. He predicts that the two of them will fight in an intense rematch, which will end exactly like Insurgency. However, what happens after the match will be different, as this time there will be no one to save him. Dylan explains that he will pull out the mats from underneath him, grab Jimmy by the head, preparing him for the concrete, only for Jimmy to escape, running away, realizing that he has escaped the same fate as Jarvis. Then he'll be worried, scared, so scared that he doesn't show up the next week, using this time for planning and plotting, dealing with multiple emotions. First, fear. Then hate, then sadness, then anger, then determination, ready to come back the following week and finally take down the evil Dylan Dark until he fails, yet again. Furthering his prediction, Dylan once again states that he will pull those mats out from underneath him and will have his opponent right where he wants him, as he will lock his arms around Jimmy's neck, forcing him to stare at nothing but the ground that he will inevitably be thrown into. Not once, but twice. Jimmy will struggle, attempting to escape like the previous encounter, only to be robbed of the chance as he will be locked in place, still gasping for breath and still desperate to be released, and then Dylan will let go, allowing Jimmy to, once again, escape. This will cause more fear to be placed in Jimmy's mind, as now he knows that Dylan could have ended it all, but decided not to. With episode 100 marking a new beginning for the whole company, it will be the end of Jimmy's young career. 1 week before their inevitable match at the pay-per-view, Dylan will face an opponent in the ring, sending a message to Jimmy. After witnessing the match in person, Jimmy's heart will want to fight, but his mind won't have the courage, as he knows he only has 7 days left of being in this business. Dylan's final prediction reaches episode 100, where the man who deserves it most will get the greatest beatdown that the world has ever seen. Dylan claims that he is a threat to Jimmy's health and career, but the fact that he knows how this feud will play out, that is what Jimmy is threatened by the most. Sniggering, Dylan is removed from the screen as Jimmy is bothered by the not-so-cryptic words. The Insurgency rematch takes place on the next episode, all with Dylan's predictions affecting the mindset of Jimmy Sparrow. Failing to prove his rival wrong, Jimmy's strikes and moves are constantly reversed by the experienced Dylan, creating doubt in the rookie's mind. Realizing the intellect of his enemy, Jimmy changes his moveset, throwing unique strikes in order to catch Dylan off guard. However, the strategy doesn't last for long, as Dylan takes over offense yet again, leading to a much-anticipated victory. Correctly predicting the result, Dylan grins menacingly at his fallen opponent and chucks him to the outside, hoping to deliver on his post-match prophecy. With Jimmy recovering, the villain strips the mats with an evil plan in mind. As Jimmy tries to escape from the brutal attack, Dylan pulls him back and clutches his neck, putting him in position for the condemnation to the concrete. However, to Dylan's delight, Jimmy squirms, trying his best to break free from his rival's clutches and eventually escapes. Panicked, Jimmy evades the scene and sits on the ramp with fear, all while Dylan sniggers at what could have been. As Dylan continues his dastardly antics the following week, Jimmy Sparrow is nowhere to be seen, as predicted. During his week off, it is announced that episode 100 will host a one-on-one match between himself and Dylan Dark, as predicted. The Riki returns on the next episode as guest commentator. Observing his rival in action, he assures everyone that if Dylan is to try any post-match beatdowns, he will be there to stop it. With Dylan now defeating his opponent, he stares at Jimmy, who sits at commentary, glaring at his foe. Dylan rolls his defeated opponent to the outside of the ring and throws him into Jimmy. Exiting quickly, Dylan has a huge grin on his face, all while Jimmy contemplates a response, as predicted. Refusing to be humiliated, Jimmy takes his headset off and hopes to respond with physicality, only for Dylan to strip the mats in front of him. Jimmy stops, in fear, now not wanting to advance. With a gap of concrete between them, Dylan chuckles and leaves with delight as Jimmy is intimidated by the scene. Meanwhile, the main event of episode 100 places Team Impetus against Team Adrenaline, all for company supremacy. With Team Impetus down one member, their captain, Greg Williams, must quickly search for a final partner. Moments after intimidating Jimmy Sparrow, Dylan is seen in his locker room, happy with his previous actions until he gets interrupted by Greg Williams. Struggling to lower his ego, Greg asks Dylan to join the team, trying to convince the villain that if he does, he has a chance of recapturing his beloved Coast to Coast title. Dylan reminds Greg that the Coast to Coast title was important to him. What's most important to him now, however, is eliminating rookies from this business and those who try to climb the ladder that doesn't belong to them. He fails to see why he would want to join a group of young brats who fit that description. He views Adrenaline's attempt to hold down these no-named wannabes as a good thing, and refuses to fight side by side with a team who wants the opposite. Dylan claims that in Impetus's world, he has been a constant oversight. Perhaps, in the new world of Adrenaline, he can achieve a higher success, rather than mess around with children. Dylan leaves the room with Greg disappointed. Episode 100. Dylan's eerie predictions have been revealed to be statements of truths. Whether it be pure coincidence or being 10 steps ahead, Dylan Dark has predicted his rivalry with Jimmy Sparrow correctly. Now, the time for episode 100 has arrived. With the villain promising the greatest beatdown that the world has ever seen, He claims that it will be given to the man who deserves it most. The question remains, who will endure this beatdown? Dylan enters with his slow and deceitful cockiness, confident with his upcoming match. Timid and unsettled, Jimmy slowly approaches the ring for his highly anticipated and predicted battle with the villain. Experiencing opposite emotions compared to their previous pay-per-view match, Jimmy is now the one with anxiety, while Dylan is full of confidence. With the contest about to begin, the announcer shocks them both with an impromptu announcement. By the request of Jimmy Sparrow and the order of the matchmaker, Gillian Day, this match has now become a Falls Count Anywhere match. With the commentators and Dylan shocked, Jimmy is now full of cockiness and instantly pounces on Dylan, starting the out-of-nowhere stipulation. The two brawl around the arena, with Jimmy enraged like we've never seen him before, using any object that he can find around him as a weapon, even using objects held by the fans. With the enemies leading back into the ring, Dylan counters, starting his beatdown. With Jimmy kicking out of not one but two spears, Dylan begins to get irritated. Frustrated with the rookie's impervious resistance, Dylan resorts to a steel chair shot to Jimmy's skull. As Jimmy kicks out yet again, Dylan is now furious, yet focused. Sizing up his opponent in the corner, Dylan delivers his drive-by kick. Hoping for a final pin, the force of the kick actually sends Jimmy out of the ring, leading to further anger for the villain. However, Dylan's emotions quickly change as his frown turns upside down, clearly creating a plan. The all-too-familiar scene takes place, seeing Dylan slither his way to the outside to strip the mats in front of Jimmy, exposing the concrete. Hoping to deliver on his prediction, Dylan grabs the squirming Jimmy by the neck and prepares him for the condemnation. The savage act is stopped by the returning Jarvis Banks, who bolts his way down the ramp, ready to attack Dylan. However, anticipating the attack, Dylan throws Jimmy into the steel steps and spears Jarvis before he can even make the save. Eliminating Jarvis yet again, Dylan refocuses and approaches Jimmy, who recovers. Grabbing his injured opponent near the barricade, Dylan gets hit in the head with a steel chair by Mark Emile, who appears on the other side of the security wall. With Dylan now knocked out, Mark exits through the crowd, happy with his involvement. As Jimmy recovers, he sees the knocked out Dylan on the floor just meters away from him and decides to pin his opponent. 1, 2, Dylan kicks out. With little energy left, Jimmy tries to lift the dead weight of Dylan, only to fall with fatigue. Out of hope and out of energy, Jimmy can do no more. He falls to the ground and lays in a heap of defeat, only to regain energy as he sees Jarvis, recovered on the outside, grabbing the previously used steel chair and sliding it towards him. With Jarvis demanding Jimmy to use it on his rival, Jimmy fires up and hits the Canadian Destroyer on the steel on the outside. Jimmy pins and wins. Dylan Dark has been defeated, truly showing that his predictions were all true, ending with the biggest beating being delivered to the man who deserved it most. After a loss at Impetus's grandest episode, one can only imagine the devastation that awaits Dylan's foes.